It all begins on the day the world ends, when humanity's most powerful forces are utterly defeated by a mysterious faction known as the Invaders. Amidst a veritable sea of bodies and destruction, only two warriors manage to stay on their feet to catch their breath. Zenon, the leader of the prestigious Glorious family and an extremely powerful holy swordsman, desperately wonders if they are the only survivors of all that carnage. His companion Alez, a legendary mage, confirms the terrible reality that all the others ended up dying in the battle. She laments that not even the prophetess Liliana and the summoner Galahad had any chance of surviving against their enemies. Even in the face of tragedy, Zenon asks Alez to focus on providing him with magical support, leaving his companion confused about his plans. Wielding his sword with determination, he makes it abundantly clear that he will not back down. Zenon points his weapon directly at a gigantic monster in red armor, and warns that he will deliver a single, decisive blow against it. They try to warn him that even by combining the forces of all the greatest warriors they couldn't defeat that monster, but the swordsman insists that this is no reason to give up. Without hesitation, Zenon focuses all his energy and activates a devastating divine light technique with his sword. He decides to go further and unleash the maximum level of his power, sacrificing his own life energy to channel an overwhelming force. Seeing that impressive display of power, he realizes that he truly has no intention of surrendering. With his sword blazing intensely, Zenon charges forward like a golden lightning bolt toward the armored giant. The gigantic enemy merely raises its enormous hand covered in red flames to block the approaching attack. Zenon grits his teeth and strains to the limit, colliding directly with his opponent's barrier. The colossal energies of the two warriors clash violently, creating a massive explosion on the battlefield. The giant monster counterattacks, bringing its colossal sword down with devastating force upon the hero. Sensing imminent danger, Zenon calls for support from her teammate. They react immediately, invoking their green magic and asking him to leave everything in their hands. She creates magical platforms in the air so that Zenon can dodge attacks and gain momentum. The Colossus's blow shatters the ground, but the swordsman manages to dodge by leaping into the air with agility. Using Alez platforms as support, Zenon leaps towards the top of his rival's enormous armor. He lets out a war cry as he prepares another lightning strike with all the strength he has left. His attack collides head-on with the giant, generating a brilliant impact that makes everything around it tremble. She watches everything in awe, believing that this incredible technique could finally make a difference. However, she is in absolute shock to see that the monster is still standing and completely intact. Determined not to give up, Zenon insists that the fight is not over yet. However, the extreme effort takes its toll, and the warrior begins to cough up a lot of blood. She desperately warns that his body won't be able to withstand any more exertion of that level. Even with his body on the verge of collapse, Zenon stubbornly continues channeling his light energy into the sword. Realizing his stubbornness, Alez makes a drastic decision when he sees that there is no other way out. She grips her magic staff tightly, poised to cast an unexpected spell. The sorceress activates a prison of light that completely paralyzes Zenon's movements, leaving him confused and outraged by her actions. They explain that he is the last hope capable of saving the world, and that is why they will not allow him to die there. Zenon shouts furiously, arguing that everyone will die anyway if they don't defeat that enemy now. But the sorceress counters, saying that's precisely why she's entrusting everything to him, because she knows he's the only one capable of changing this terrible fate. Then she reveals a golden pocket watch, and explains that it is a magical tool passed down through generations in her family. With no time for further explanation, Alez rushes to contain the giant's attack as a bright magic circle activates. She asks him to promise her that next time he won't let those damned invaders win. The pocket watch glows brightly to honor the memory of all who have passed, while Zenon screams in despair, not understanding his companion's plans. They insist that he is leaving the fate of the world in his hands as humanity's last hope, ignoring Zenon's cries begging to be released to fight. The gigantic enemy unleashes a deadly attack, but the sorceress steps in front to shield the spell with her own life. With tears in his eyes and a sad smile on his face, he bids farewell to his companion. An immense column of blue light erupts from the ground and envelops the warrior, sending him to the past. The giant's destructive blow strikes the spot squarely, consuming everything in an explosion of red flames. The gold pocket watch falls to the ground, completely shattered. The destroyed artifact rests on the cracked earth, marking the end of that timeline. Badly injured and lying amidst the ruins of the battlefield, she coughs weakly from her mortal wounds. Despite its tragic end, she smiles with relief upon realizing that the time travel spell worked. That mysterious clock was a divine item with enough power to alter reality and grant a new chance at reincarnation to change the fate of the world. As Zenon's soul drifts through infinite cosmic space, He realizes he is about to return to the past to live a completely new life under a different identity. He hears Ales's last thoughts, pleading with him to show the world that he is capable of changing this tragic fate, while she faces the invaders alone. Lying on the ground and surrounded by a strong magical light, the sorceress gathers her last strength to complete the forbidden spell. With a last gasp of hope, Ales hopes that, in this new chance she's giving him, she will finally be able to win his heart. Suddenly, the warrior wakes up screaming their name in despair, realizing that he is no longer on the battlefield but inside a huge mansion. Sitting on a luxurious bed and suffering from a severe headache, the dark-haired boy tries to understand what is happening. He looks around confused and notices that he is in some nobleman's room, deducing that this must be the effect of the time travel artifact used by his companion. Looking at his own hands, the warrior wonders what on earth just happened to him. At that moment, a young maid runs into the room and asks, very worried, if something is wrong with him. Still under the influence of adrenaline, he orders her to prepare a weapon immediately so that he can return to combat, leaving the girl confused, thinking that her young master Noah had only had a nightmare. Upon hearing that name, the young man becomes confused and asks who she is, prompting the maid to introduce herself as Lydia, his servant. Intrigued, he decides to examine his own hands, and realizes that they are too thin and delicate for someone who has trained with a sword his entire life. The swordsman panics when he realizes that the frail body definitely doesn't belong to him. He wonders if he ended up possessing someone else's body, or if that time travel ended up changing his entire reality in an even stranger way. The boy then demands to know where they are and what his true identity is, leaving Lydia even more frightened by his behavior. The maid tries to reassure him, imagining that he is acting so strangely because of some delirium caused by his high fever. With no patience for beating around the bush, he firmly grips her shoulders and demands that she answer his questions once and for all. Startled, Lydia reveals that this is the Daskur family mansion and that he is Noah Daskur, the fourth son of the family, prompting the boy to immediately ask what year of the royal calendar it is. Upon hearing from the servant that they are in the year 850, the young man is shocked by the revelation. He puts the pieces together and realizes that them's magic sent him exactly 10 years before the start of the apocalyptic invasion that destroyed the world. To make matters worse, he realizes he has been reincarnated into the terrible Daskur family, known as the Wicked Magical Swordsmen, who are the sworn rivals of his former order of Holy Swordsmen. At that moment, a knock on the door interrupts her thoughts, and a voice announces Selina's arrival. A second maid enters the room carrying a bowl and announces that she has brought the young master's medicine. Noah is suspicious of the situation, and Lydia explains that this is the usual remedy that Master Scar prepared especially to take care of his fragile health. The boy accepts the bowl and stares at the dark liquid with considerable distrust. Thanks to his ancient warrior instincts, he senses a dark aura and a strange smell coming from that supposed cure. Without thinking twice, Noah throws the bowl to the ground, shattering it into several pieces and startling the two maids. Suddenly, 3 guards from the mansion burst into the room, and their leader ironically greets him as the young blade of the Daskur family, making the boy question who those bastards are. The leader of the guards falsely claims that he only heard a strange noise and came to check if everything was all right with the young master. The man stares at the boy with a cold, calculating look, concealing his true intentions. Looking at the spilled medicine on the floor, the guard laments that he wasted Scar's goodwill and says he will have another dose prepared immediately. Noah laughs at the situation and scoffs at the medicine, prompting the guard to threaten no mercy if he continues insulting their master. Without hesitation, the boy challenges the man to drink the liquid himself, openly accusing them of trying to poison him. He knows very well that his ancient spiritual energy as a sacred swordsman naturally repels evil forces, which made it easier to identify that the altered color in the drink was pure poison. Realizing they've been discovered, the leader of the guards changes his stance and decides he'll have to force him to drink the poison. Instead of being scared, Noah gives a slight smile and celebrates that the masks of those traitors have finally fallen. He realizes that those guards should be his watchdogs, but he finds the situation perfect, since he really wanted to test the capabilities of this new body. With a confident yet brooding look, the boy announces that he's going to have some fun confronting them all. The leader of the guards loses his patience and immediately orders his subordinates to immobilize Noah on the ground. The subordinates quickly move forward to carry out the order, while the two maids cower in terror in the corner of the room. Noah simply clenches his fist calmly and prepares to launch the first counterattack. As the first guard approaches, the boy easily dodges and lands a devastating kick straight to the attacker's stomach. The impact is so strong that the man is thrown a considerable distance and spits out saliva, his breath completely cut off. The second guard lunges forward furiously, throwing a punch, but Noah ducks with impressive reflexes to avoid the blow. Taking advantage of the opening, the young nobleman lands a powerful upward punch right on his opponent's chin. The leader of the guards curses with rage as he sees his men on the ground, while Noah examines his fists and laments that the strength of his blows is still far too weak compared to his former physique. He realizes how much the body has been weakened by the poison over time, and decides he will investigate who is behind this plan as soon as he finishes cleaning up that mess. Furious at the humiliation, the head of the guards orders his men to use their swords to finish the job, not caring if the boy gets a little bruised. At that moment, Noah notices a strange change in the environment as he faces the armed enemies. The two guards lunge at him with everything they've got, while blue holographic screens appear in the air revealing the name and extremely low skill level of each of them. Noah is surprised to discover that he has gained an extremely rare assessment ability, allowing him to see the status of his opponents. He wonders if that power already belonged to the body's original owner, but quickly focuses on defending himself when he realizes that the two guards advancing are just entry-level recruits. The two recruits attack together, exchanging sword blows, but the young man dodges with extreme agility. One of the attackers is in complete shock when he realizes he missed his strike, and that his young master is moving much faster than expected. Taking advantage of the opening, Noah lands a relentless spinning kick that knocks down both opponents at once. With the recruits lying on the ground, the boy quickly grabs one of their swords to arm himself. Seeing his henchmen defeated, the leader Oscar decides to join the fight and attacks Noah with all his might. The two swords clash violently, creating sparks that illuminate the noble chamber. Noah uses his refined technique to deflect his opponent's blade and deliver a precise counterattack. Oscar is thrown backward by the impact, falling on his back on the floor before the horrified gaze of the two maids. The leader stands up, surprised by his strength, commenting that even a sick heir of the Daskur family is still dangerous, but Noah simply challenges him to stop watching and attack him for real. Suddenly, the young warrior felt a terrible shock run through his body, his eyes widening in pain. A dense, dark purple energy begins to emanate uncontrollably from him, making him realize that the demonic core of that body has just awakened. This demonic core is the unique source of dark power for all magical swordsmen of the Daskur family. On the other hand, the power that Noah used to wield in his past life as a holy swordsman was channeled through the sacred core. Normally, these two forces of completely opposite natures could never coexist in a single body without causing a tragedy. Oscar gives a sadistic smile as he watches the young nobleman suffer, saying that the energy has finally begun to go mad, and decides to reveal a terrible secret before finishing him off. The guard reveals that the daily medication Noah was taking was actually a poison specifically designed to overheat and dangerously amplify his demonic core. He explains that the young man's body is being destroyed by this uncontrolled energy, and that the physical exertion of the fight has just triggered the final collapse. Knowing that excessive power can destroy his physical body, Noah realizes he needs to make a risky bet to see if he can handle the pressure. He decides to try something unprecedented and desperate to try, and contain the advance of that evil energy. The boy decides to use the memories of his soul to invoke the power of the sacred core, and try to forcibly suppress the demonic power that is coursing through his veins. Oscar scoffs at the attempt, thinking it's just a futile effort, and prepares to unleash his special fighting technique. The warrior activates a shadowy displacement technique, disappearing into thin air amidst a mist of red energy. In the blink of an eye, a red blade emerges from nowhere behind Noah, aiming for a fatal blow. However, Noah manages to react in time and blocks the sneaky blow with his sword, leaving the attacker perplexed. Oscar is incredulous to see that the boy managed to read his attack and questions whether he is already capable of using techniques combined with the demonic core. Annoyed by the resistance, the leader of the guards calls Noah trash and warns him that he should know his place, while the boy uses his ability to see that the enemy possesses 3 stars of physical strength. Focused on the battle, the young nobleman coldly analyzes the situation as the two forces continue to clash. He performs a quick circular maneuver with his sword to push the enemy away with a gust of wind. Oscar persists in his attack, unleashing heavy blows imbued with pure dark energy against the young man. The clash between their magic sparks an intense battle of forces in the middle of the room. The leader of the guards advances furiously, unleashing a rapid flurry of blows with his sword covered in red flames. Noah defends himself perfectly against each of the attacks, maintaining his impeccable posture. The two continue exchanging high-speed attacks, making the fight increasingly intense. After this quick exchange of blows, Noah realizes he already knows the limits of his enemy's technique, but he knows he can't prolong the fight because his weak body wouldn't withstand a long battle. Oscar teases the young man, pointing out that he is already out of breath and asking where all that confidence from before has gone. With a sarcastic smile on his face, Noah replies that the guard is the one who's starting to lose his composure and panic. Enraged by the insolence, the warrior advances furiously to deliver what he believes to be the final blow. He shouts that the young man will never be able to predict the movements of his secret technique. Once again, the room is filled with a dense, frightening red smoke that conceals the assailant. The two maids watch everything in terror, unable to see what is happening in the middle of that magical Focused, Noah closes his eyes and uses the unprecedented combination of his sacred and demonic energies to track the enemy. He pinpoints Oscar's exact location and delivers a powerful diagonal slash, shouting that he has found him. The impact of the blow generates a blinding flash followed by a large shockwave that dissipates all the smoke. Oscar falls defeated to the ground, spitting blood and asking unbelievably how that was possible. Noah calmly approaches and explains that, although the enemy can conceal his body with his technique, he would never be able to hide his presence, ironically noting that the guard trusted his own spell too much. Unable to accept defeat, the leader of the guards collapses completely to the ground while wondering what kind of bizarre power this was. The young nobleman simply stares at him coldly and says that even he doesn't fully understand this power yet, so he wouldn't be able to explain it. Noah silently reflects on the incredible sensation of having felt, for the first time in history, the sacred core and the demonic core intertwining harmoniously to increase his power. He realizes that he possesses a unique combination of the sacred core of his original soul, with the demonic core belonging to the original owner of that body. The young man believes that if he can perfectly master this new fusion of energies, he will finally have a real chance to save the world once again. Noah smiles sincerely and mentally thanks them, knowing that it was thanks to her sacrifice that he found a new light of hope. At that moment, the two maids ran desperately towards him, asking if he was hurt and suggesting they call a doctor immediately. Noah tries to reassure them that he's fine and points to the bedroom window, curious to know what the strange creature that just landed there is. A small black dragon with outstretched wings is perched on the parapet, carrying an important letter sealed in its mouth. Lydia takes the message and explains that it is an official summons sent by the current patriarch of the family, Lord Victor. She hands the envelope to Noah and reveals that the letter demands confirmation of his desire to participate in the family's impending succession battle. The young man holds the paper, intrigued, wondering if this succession war is common knowledge, and deciding that he needs to obtain more information to secure his future. He then asks the two women directly if they know anything about this internal dispute within the Daskor family. Lydia immediately confirms this, explaining that anyone who attends to the Daskor household knows the story of that dark event very well. The servant explains that the succession war is a brutal conflict created to forge a ruthless heir, essentially a true hunt for demonic cores. She reveals that the siblings are forced to fight each other to the death, so that the winner can absorb the core of the defeated and assume leadership of the family with absolute power. Noah recalls that there were almost no historical records about the Daskor family in his past life, concluding that they likely systematically killed each other in these internal wars. Worried about the danger, Lydia seriously asks if he really intends to put his life at risk and participate in that bloody contest. With a confident and mysterious look, the boy gives a slight smile and replies that she will find out the answer very soon. Noah remembers that in his previous life, his original family was revered by the public as holy knights who used the sacred core as a symbol of justice. In contrast, the Daskor family represents the complete opposite, being feared and hated by all due to rumors that they wield a macabre demonic power. Although most of his history is a mystery, the boy knows one thing is indisputable. The patriarch Victor Daskor is considered the strongest swordsman in all of humanity. Determined to face his new destiny, Noah walks to the immense doors of the main hall to discover what that mysterious place hides. He decides he needs to witness the reality of that terrible family with his own eyes. Dressed elegantly and imposingly, the young man opens the double doors, fully assuming the identity of Noah Daskor. He enters the hall announcing that he has come to personally answer his father's summons. As he walks down the red carpet, Noah carefully observes the assembled crowd and realizes that he is finally standing before his new family. Using his assessment skills, the first person he analyzes is the eldest son, Damien Daskor, who wears heavy black armor and displays an intimidating posture. Immediately afterwards, his eyes turn to his eldest daughter, Julia Daskor, a beautiful and serious young woman with long silver hair. The young man also assesses the family's second son, Cees Daskor, a blonde youth who observes the situation in a very calm and relaxed manner. Beside him is his second daughter, Eve Daskor, a young woman who keeps her eyes downcast and appears quite reserved. Suddenly, Noah's expression changes completely when he spots another brother in the hall. He immediately recognizes the family's third son, Skar Daskor, identifying him as the one truly responsible for systematically trying to poison him with the fake medicine. Julia breaks the silence and comments that the rumors about his recovery were true, prompting Noah to calmly reply that he recently discovered the real cause of his illness. His sister asks if he plans to spend the next few days recovering, but the young man firmly states that he intends to focus all his time on sword training. The unexpected revelation causes Julia to narrow her eyes with considerable distrust and surprise. Scar lets out a sarcastic laugh, mocking the idea of a sick loser training and advising him not to waste his time. Noah is not intimidated and coldly retorts, saying that a coward who doesn't have the courage to face him personally should keep his mouth shut. The red-haired brother is furious at the insolent reply and glares at him with hatred for having been challenged in that way. Before the argument escalates, the older sister intervenes authoritatively and orders them both to shut up immediately because their time is up. At that moment, the announcer in the hall loudly proclaims the imminent arrival of the patriarch Victor Dascour. Heavy, imposing footsteps begin to echo through the main hall, instantly changing the atmosphere. Damien and Julia immediately close their eyes as a sign of deep respect and awe for their father's authority. The other brothers also line up in absolute silence, tensely awaiting the approach of the legendary figure. Noah begins to sweat profusely as he senses an overwhelming and intimidating presence, unlike anything he has ever experienced before. He recognizes that he is standing before a legendary swordsman whose reputation for strength was known to all, even in his past life. The powerful family leader reveals himself to all as Victor Dascour, a feared, top-level demonic swordsman with 9 stars of power. Seated on his throne of thorns, Victor notices that all his children are present, and they respond promptly with utmost respect. The patriarch declares earnestly that the Convocation Council is officially underway. He fixes his stern gaze on his 4th son and says that this meeting serves to confirm his true intentions. In a deep voice, Victor directly questions what Noah intends to accomplish now that he has overcome the deadly illness that afflicted him. The young heir displays an extremely confident and audacious smile in response to the patriarch's question. Without hesitation, Noah declares loudly and clearly that he intends to participate in the bloody succession dispute, and that he will emerge as the sole and absolute winner. Victor looks at the young man seriously and asks if he is truly prepared for that statement to be treated as a direct declaration of war against all the candidates present. Noah clenches his fist tightly and retorts that his father's assumption isn't entirely correct. He clarifies before the entire silent room that this is in fact a declaration of war against absolutely everyone present. Under the stern gaze of his older brothers, the boy explains that the adversaries he needs to overcome to reach his ultimate goal go far beyond this. While C's, Eve, and Scar observe the youngest's audacity, Noah adds that his targets aren't just his brothers and sisters. Patriarch Victor listens attentively as his son boldly declares that he too is included on that list. With a defiant smile on his face, Noah confirms that even his own father is one of the opponents he intends to defeat. The audacious response causes Victor to instantly unleash an absurd and suffocating amount of purple demonic energy throughout the hall. The spiritual pressure from the patriarch is so overwhelming that it begins to crack the solid stone columns of the palace. Pieces of rubble begin to fall from the ceiling due to the brutal force of that display of power. Noah gritted his teeth as he tried to hold his ground against the raging wind, recognizing that this was the true and terrifying force of Victor's demonic core. The patriarch looks down at him with a grim gaze and questions whether the young man truly believes he will one day be able to surpass his power. Even under that deadly pressure, Noah holds his father's gaze and answers with extreme confidence, yes. Intrigued by his son's determination, Victor asks him why he desires so much power. The boy explains seriously that he wants to become the strongest to ensure that nothing else in this world can be stolen from him by anyone. Hearing the young man's sincere and ambitious answer, Victor lets out a wide, frightening smile. The patriarch slapped the throne's support and declared that he greatly appreciated that gesture, considering it an ambition worthy of a true member of the Dascour family. Victor then officially announces to the entire hall that, from that day forward, Noah will participate in the War of Succession and challenges anyone who opposes him to step forward. None of the brothers dare to speak out against the patriarch's decision, leaving Scar only to gnash his teeth in anger and silence. Finally, Victor roars with authority, ordering Noah to become power-hungry if he wants to survive this contest. Sometime later, the scene changes to the sunny courtyard of the Dascour family mansion. With a quick and precise sword cut, a straw training dummy is split in half. Noah trains alone in the garden, holding a wooden sword, under the watchful gaze of his maids in the background. The young man assesses his current physical condition and realizes that his body has improved considerably, although it is still at the minimum limit necessary to be able to fight. He reflects that due to his new hybrid core which blends sacred and demonic energies, he can no longer fight as before, nor use the traditional techniques of either order. Noah observes the bright sparks of purple and gold energy in his hand, trying to comprehend the true nature of that mysterious power. He concludes that the best thing to do for now is to hide the existence of his sacred hybrid core from everyone, as revealing that he possesses sacred powers amidst a demonic family would bring unpredictable consequences. Suddenly, his sister Julia emerges from behind a tree, commenting that his movements don't look anything like those of someone who is bedridden, leaving the young man curious about her presence there. She explains that, until then, her eldest son Damien was the father's only favorite child, but that now Noah has also entered the competition for attention. Julia reveals that it was obvious she was going to test her brother personally to see what was so special about him, making Noah realize her true intentions. Without wasting any time, the older sister draws her wooden training sword and announces that they will begin combat immediately. Noah is surprised by the sudden action and barely has time to react before being attacked by her. Julia moves forward with impressive speed, delivering a glancing vertical blow that almost hits her brother. With a defiant look, the young woman ironically asks if he really thought she had come all the way there just to chat. The boy lets out a frustrated snap of his fingers and quickly concentrates to keep up with her pace. The silver-haired warrior unleashes a swift sequence of training attacks against her younger brother. Noah manages to block the blows and thinks that this is the perfect opportunity to test the limits of his current combat skills. Julia executes a flurry of rapid thrusts that seem to multiply her wooden blade in the air. The boy finds himself forced to constantly retreat across the courtyard to dodge all of her precise attacks. The young woman praises her brother's talent, but points out that his current level is still far from truly satisfactory. While displaying her status as a formidable 7-star warrior, Julia questions whether the skills recognized by her father are limited to just that. Noah smiles slightly under the pressure, acknowledging that his sister is indeed very strong, having already achieved mastery of the 7 stars. Without giving him a break, Julia pushes forward again, saying she's disappointed with his performance so far. The boy tenses up when he realizes how incredibly fast his sister's attack movements. He finds himself forced to grip the hilt of his wooden sword tightly and channel his inner energy to defend himself. The two wooden weapons clash forcefully, creating an explosion of purple and yellow sparks at the point of impact. Noah feels the pressure of the blow and struggles to maintain his balance as he tries to control the unstable flow of his hybrid core. The two heirs continue exchanging swift blows in the center of the courtyard, the sound of the clashing wood echoing through the garden. During the confrontation, Julia comments that his strange power must be the famous defective demonic core everyone was talking about, surprising Noah with the term. The sister explains that she had always heard that his demonic core was extremely weak and imperfect from birth, making the boy silently reflect on the past of the original owner of that body. He realizes that, in fact, that body already possessed the sacred demonic core from the beginning, and that to any layperson it would appear only as an imperfect and weak core. The young man reflects that, as long as no one discovers that his power is a mixture of sacred and demonic energy, he can fight seriously without raising suspicion. Noah confidently announces that he will prove whether his core is truly a failure, while Julia comments amused that he seems to be enjoying the fight. Without hesitation, the young man advances determinedly toward his sister to deliver the next blow with his wooden weapon. However, Julia dodges the attack with extreme ease and slides behind him, calling his name. She questions whether he knows the true purpose of the Dasquer family succession dispute, which consists of stealing the demonic cores of their own relatives to create the strongest warrior of all. Noah confirms that he knows this very well, causing his sister to decide to drop her wooden sword to save time. Enveloped by a dense and menacing fog of black flames, Julia asks with a dark look if she can have his demonic core once and for all. The boy is completely shocked when he realizes she's serious and intends to kill him right there. Sensing the danger of death, Noah desperately yells for Selena to throw down her real combat sword. The maid reacts quickly and throws the real weapon towards the young master, while the other servant watches everything in terror. Noah manages to catch the sword in midair and immediately envelops it with his brilliant energy to block Julia's deadly blow. The collision of his sister's royal sword generates an immense explosion of red energy that makes the boy recoil, letting out a groan of pain. He finds himself forced to grip the cable with both hands and exert all his energy to avoid being sliced apart by her overwhelming force. Taking advantage of the fact that their swords are locked, Julia delivers a violent kick to the boy's abdomen to break his defense. The impact pushes Noah back, forcing him to concentrate intensely to maintain his fighting stance. The young woman lets out a sadistic laugh and confesses that she is much more impressed with his resilience than she had imagined. She challenges him to demonstrate even more of his skills as she prepares to increase the intensity of the combat. Julia steps back to create distance and mockingly asks if he will be able to withstand the next attack she is preparing. The silver-haired warrior assumes her most lethal stance and activates the dance of the dark flame sword, covering her weapon in black and red fire. Noah realizes that the attack is extremely dangerous and decides to focus all his energy on blocking the blow with everything he has. Julia leaps and descends with a devastating slash that generates a gigantic blade of dark fire heading towards the boy. The young man manages to contain the brutal attack using his energy barrier, although he feels his entire body tremble from the impact. The violent clash of powers creates a whirlwind that sweeps through the mansion's courtyard, forcing the two maids to take shelter to avoid being hit. Julia presses her sword against his using only one hand and ironically questions whether he intends to continue fighting in that defensive manner. She challenges him to use all his physical strength to force her to use both hands on the sword hilt. Noah focuses all his determination and activates the purple and yellow energy currents to push back his sister's blade. The boy uses all the power of his body and delivers an upward blow with both hands to break her balance. The young woman finds herself forced to hold the sword with both hands in order to block her younger brother's surprise attack. Noah gives a victorious smile as he notices that he has finally managed to force his older sister to use both hands to defend herself. However, Julia channels her dark energy and repels him with incredible force, throwing the boy backward. Noah slides across the floor, grinding his teeth as he tries to break the impact of the fall. The force of the retreat is so violent that it cracks the stone floor of the courtyard beneath the young warrior's feet. Julia lands elegantly and stares at him seriously, maintaining her somber aura. The boy realizes that using the full power of his hybrid core was only enough to survive her attack. The last golden sparks from his sword begin to fade, revealing the young man's extreme exhaustion. Noah rests the tip of his sword on the ground and understands that this is the current limit of energy his body can withstand without collapsing. His sister asks if he knows why the members of the Daskor family don't kill themselves immediately after birth. She herself explains that the stronger a demonic core becomes, the slower its growth, and that is why they do not hunt weaker siblings. Julia adds that it would be a complete waste to harvest a demonic core before it has developed to a satisfactory level. However, the young woman unleashes an immense amount of murderous energy upon noticing that he was able to block and even counterattack her serious blows. With her eyes glowing red, she warns that if his core is already at that level of power, it's definitely worth stealing it right now. Noah slaps his hand in concern when he realizes that his sister truly intends to kill him without any hesitation. Julia leaps towards him in midair and prepares to unleash the eighth form of her dark flame style. At this critical moment, a male voice roars, ordering her to stop immediately. A man appears out of nowhere and throws himself between the two, using his own sword to block Julia's deadly aerial attack. The newcomer, named Kyle, desperately shouts that young Master Noah will surely die if she continues with that lethal attack. Annoyed by the interference, Julia demands that he get out of the way, but the warrior argues that Noah's demonic core is still only at the 2-star level and that it wouldn't make sense to harvest it now. The revelation leaves the older sister confused and incredulous, as she herself witnessed the boy blocking her strongest blows with ease. While the truth about his true power remains hidden, Noah stays silent, exhausted and frustrated with the physical limitations of his new body. Kyle confirms that this is a proven fact that he himself investigated under Victor's direct orders, adding that Noah's core has already exhausted all its energy in the strength test. The warrior argues that if the boy truly possessed a higher level of skill, he wouldn't have reached his physical limit so quickly in the face of that basic attack. Noah continues to pant and pretends to be completely exhausted, holding his sword with difficulty to maintain the disguise of weakness. Believing Kyle's words, Julia sheathes her sword and concludes that it was all a misunderstanding on her part. However, the girl earnestly warns Noah not to forget that she still deeply desires his demonic core for herself. She suggests that the two of them fight for real in the future, once he has grown strong and his core has fully developed, promising that she will face him to the end when that day comes. Noah flashes a defiant smile and replies that he will be eagerly awaiting the moment of their reunion. As she walks away across the courtyard, Julia continues to have an unsettling feeling that there is something very strange and mysterious about the boy's true power. She recalls the powerful impact of the swords clashing and thinks that such a perfect block would never be possible for someone with only 2 stars of power. Looking sideways behind her, the silver-haired warrior concludes that her younger brother is hiding some very important secret from all of them. The young woman lets out a mischievous laugh at the suspicion, finding the situation increasingly interesting. Julia whispers that she hopes Noah continues to grow in such an amazing way, while the scene cuts to another mansion where furious screams of hatred echo through the hallways. The third son, Scar, throws his glass against the wall in a fit of rage, upset by the latest news about his younger brother. Seated on his luxurious sofa surrounded by women, the red-haired young man indignantly complains that a weakling like Noah has been allowed to take the stage in the succession war. He shouts furiously, complaining that not even he received any kind of praise or encouragement from his father in that way. The leader of the guards, Oscar, tries to calm his master down, stating that he also cannot accept this unfair situation and warns that he has an urgent report to deliver. He approaches Scar to relay the details of what he witnessed regarding Noah's alleged increase in strength. Upon hearing the information from his subordinate, the red-haired heir gives a wicked smile and remarks that he has just devised a very interesting plan. With a sadistic and vengeful look, Scar mentally vows that he will do everything to drag Noah into utter ruin and remove him once and for all from the race for family leadership. Back in the main garden, Kyle bows cordially before the young master and apologizes for his late arrival. The warrior formally introduces himself as Kyle Olsen and reveals that he was appointed by the patriarch himself to act as Noah's combat instructor. He explains that Victor thought the war would be boring if the youngest son were eliminated right away, so he sent a high-level instructor to make up for the time the boy spent weakened in bed. Intrigued by the newcomer, Noah discreetly activates his spiritual assessment ability to analyze the warrior's attributes. The holographic status reveals that Kyle possesses an incredible 7 stars in physical strength and 8 in swordsmanship, leading the young nobleman to acknowledge that the instructor's skills are more than satisfactory for training. The boy asks if they're going to start training right then, but Kyle replies that they have a different commitment before that. The instructor extends his hand and hands over a sealed document, stating that he has received express orders from Victor. Noah opens the letter and reads the mission: to investigate and eliminate once and for all a dangerous source of miasma that has appeared in the region. The letter details that these miasma sources are dangerous phenomena where malevolent energy accumulates in a mysterious way, and that the situation can only be resolved by defeating the area's leading monster. Despite the danger of the exploration mission, the young warrior smiles slightly at the opportunity. He realizes he can use this risky expedition to his advantage to train away from the watchful eyes of his rivals at the mansion. A short time later, the group enters the forest, and one of the elite soldiers delivers a precise blow to slice through an arachnid monster that appears in their path. Kyle observes the expedition's progress and orders his men to maintain the accelerated pace to annihilate all the creatures in that dense forest. The elite subordinates follow instructions to the letter, eliminating the smaller beasts with swift blows of their swords. Meanwhile, the soldiers whisper mean jokes about Noah behind his back, mocking the fact that the heir only has 2 power stars and seems terrified of the weaker monsters in the forest. Kyle himself watches the youngest in silence, agreeing that they should focus on moving forward quickly instead of wasting time with weaklings, wondering what Victor saw that was so special about the boy. Suddenly, one of the guards in the vanguard shouts in fright, calling for Noah and instructor Kyle. As they approach the location indicated by the soldier, they were surprised to find several children lying unconscious in the middle of the forest grass. Kyle assesses the children's condition and asks Noah what they should do, since they appear to be unconscious due to the effects of the miasma. The instructor considers that containing the source of the miasma is the absolute priority, and that, since there is no time to send them back, they will have to take the children with them during the exploration. The guards put the children on their backs, and the group resumes their march through the dark forest to find the source of the evil energy. As they advance, the sky above the forest begins to be filled with an eerie purple and crimson hue. Giant black roots covered in dark, toxic smoke begin to emerge from between the tree trunks. Kyle warns that the concentration of evil energy is rising rapidly, and advises that the monster that rules that forest must be hiding very close by. At that moment, the macabre claws of a huge insect landed forcefully on a tree branch, breaking the wood under their colossal weight. The group is caught by surprise, and one of the soldiers screams in terror upon recognizing the giant creature as a dangerous scorpia. The gigantic scorpion monster emerges from behind the trees, causing one of the guards to immediately order the unconscious children to be moved to a safe place. Kyle tenses up and explains that, under the influence of that concentrated miasma, the beast's power level should be equivalent to a Class A monster, warning that its carcass is extremely tough and difficult to pierce. Before they can devise any defense plan, Scorpia's colossal stinger descends at high speed toward the warriors. Noah reacts quickly and lets out a warning cry, alerting everyone that the monster's deadly attack is coming their way. The scorpion's giant tail smashes the ground with terrifying violence, forcing the soldiers to desperately leap back to escape the impact of the explosion. Kyle is impressed by the brutal force of the stinger's strike, and shocked to realize how fast that giant creature can be. The instructor panics when he sees Noah charging alone against the monster, desperately warning that a boy with only 2 stars would surely be killed by the impact. The giant Scorpia immediately turns towards its new challenger, expelling an extremely toxic green smoke from its mandibles. Noah leaps with agility and channels his hybrid energy into his sword to deliver a precise cut in midair. The boy dodges the monster's colossal pincers with quick, calculated movements. He uses his gleaming sword to directly block and repel the creature's stinger attack. Kyle is speechless when he sees that the young man was able to deflect the blow, but shouts, warning that the real danger of the Scorpia lies in the deadly venom it carries. The beast raises its tail and fires several bursts of corrosive green venom at the boy. Noah performs a series of impressive aerial stunts to dodge all the acid projectiles. The scorpion lunges forward with another stinger, bathed in venom, in an attempt to pierce the young man's defenses. However, the boy uses his sword with mastery and cuts off the tip of the creature's stinger in one swift motion. Noah maintains impeccable composure, displaying a completely focused gaze as he plans his next move. He lands lightly on the ground, observing the weakened creature after having its main weapon severed. Kyle and the other guards are completely impressed, commenting that despite the rumors about Noah's weak core, his swordsmanship is absolutely brilliant. To everyone's surprise, the Scorpia's stinger regenerates instantly before their very eyes. The furious monster conjures several green magic circles in the air to unleash a storm of arrows of pure poison. Noah spins his gleaming sword to block and dispel the toxic spells before they reach the group. He gripped the weapon's handle with both hands, firmly resisting the pressure of the corrosive magic. The boy manages to get through the acid storm and quickly advances towards the body of the giant scorpion. He tries to strike the beast's carcass to break its defenses. However, the sword blade collides with the hard metal-like shell, generating only sparks and causing no real damage. Noah gritted his teeth as he realized that the monster's natural armor was too tough to be pierced by ordinary cuts. Kyle watches him fight with admiration, mentally wondering how the young heir managed to develop such perfect swordsmanship without anyone teaching him. The youngest child shouts, calling for Kyle and asking the instructor for help in resolving that difficult situation. Noah asks if the elite warrior would be able to create an opening in the monster's defense for even a moment, and Kyle confidently replies that he can leave that to him. Scorpia's regenerated tail descends at high speed to crush the instructor. Kyle roars with determination and charges forward chest to intercept the beast's devastating blow. He uses all his 7-star strength to block and hold the giant stinger with his sword, temporarily immobilizing the monster's tail. Taking advantage of the perfect opening created by his ally, Noah leaps high above the fight to initiate his attack. The boy lands with precision directly on the back of the giant scorpion. He stands firmly on the creature's armored shell. Then he pulls out one of the venomous fangs from the monsters they had previously defeated in the forest. Noah plunges his sharp fang with all his might against the monster's natural armor. The spine penetrates the armored shell, creating a deep crack in the scorpion's structure. The monster begins to writhe in pain as the boy injects the concentrated venom into the open wound. The acidic toxins react rapidly with the Scorpia's shell, corroding and weakening its metal armor. The compound weakens the monster's entire defensive structure, leaving it completely vulnerable to direct hits. Noah leaps back to the ground and reveals that he used the venomous fangs of the spiders they encountered along the way to overcome the monster's defenses. He gives a wry smile and reveals that the venom of those smaller spiders has the perfect chemical property to soften the hard carapace of this giant scorpion. Kyle finally understands everything, realizing that this was precisely why the boy insisted on collecting the spines of the weaker monsters during the march. The Scorpia roars in agony as its red eyes gleam with fury, preparing for one last desperate attack. The beast attempts to strike again with its stinger to crush the 2 invaders. However, magical green containment circles appear in the air above the monster to block its movements. Kyle assumes his battle stance and begins to channel his third form of demonic swordsmanship style. The instructor plunges his blade into the ground with extreme force to activate his sealing spell. He conjures an immense purple barrier around the beast, completely immobilizing it so that it cannot escape. Noah displays a victorious smile and thinks to himself that this is the perfect time to finish the fight. The young man leaps high into the sky, enveloped by a brilliant storm of sacred and demonic energy, his sword in hand. He swoops down like a relentless lightning bolt, slicing through the creature's softened body with extraordinary ease. A huge flash of white and purple light erupts from the ground upon impact, completely pulverizing the giant scorpion and ending the threat from that forest. Noah lands calmly on the ground after delivering the decisive blow that sliced the giant monster. He focuses all his attention and decides that it's the ideal time to put a new fighting technique based on Julia's style to the test. Invoking a powerful blend of his energies, the boy begins to conjure his secret sacred demonic style technique. He lets out a furious war cry and unleashes a devastating dance of light and shadow swords against what remains of the monster. A colossal beam of purple and gold energy cuts through the air with immense violence toward the target. The blow perfectly splits the remainder of the giant scorpion in half, completing the destruction of the beast. The scorpia explodes into pieces, its acidic blood splattering across the dirt courtyard, marking the definitive end of the combat. The two guards watching from afar were completely shocked, unable to believe that a young man of only 2 stars possessed such extraordinary power and such advanced techniques. Noah analyzes the residual energy in his weapon and thinks to himself that, although he managed to recreate Julia's technique using his hybrid core, he still has a lot of training to do. Kyle approaches, praising the excellent work, but the young man says he will leave the cleaning of that area to the elite instructor. The instructor questions where the young master is going in such a hurry, and Noah enigmatically replies that it's merely a matter of personal interest. The youngest son then ventures alone into the depths of the dark and misty forest of that region. He remembers that back then, the true cause behind the emergence of miasma sources was still a complete mystery to humanity. The boy, however, knows very well that the origin of all that concentrated evil energy is always generated by a magical artifact hidden in the area. Noah walks until he comes across a huge, ancient tree that appears to be the source of the forest's contamination. Without hesitation, he uses his sword to make a deep cut in the thick bark of the aged trunk. Inside the tree, the boy discovers a bright magic ring that had been hidden and serving as the source of the miasma. Noah holds the mysterious artifact and smiles contentedly, having found exactly what he was looking for so quickly. Suddenly, a terrible cry of despair echoes from afar through the forest, breaking the silence of that moment. The young warrior is startled by the sound and immediately realizes that something has gone very wrong with the rest of the group. He runs back at high speed to the spot where he had left the soldiers and the unconscious children. Upon arriving, Noah is shocked to see that the unconscious children have begun emanating a mysterious green energy from their necks. One of the guards runs to the desperate young master, warning that a massive horde of monsters has begun to surround them from all sides. The boy assumes his guard stance as he notices dozens of terrifying beasts approaching from among the trees. The entire forest is overrun by a chaotic horde of wolves, orcs, and giant spiders, advancing with a thirst for blood. The guards attempt to position themselves defensively to protect the wounded while being completely surrounded by the horde of monsters. One of the monsters lunges at Noah, but the boy blocks the attack using the protective power of his hybrid aura. Kyle rushes to the front line, delivering precise blows to keep the creatures away from the young master. Seeing the elite instructor easily slice through a wolf, Noah is reassured, realizing that his strength will be enough to keep them safe for now. The young nobleman orders the guards to continue fighting with all their might to buy as much time as possible in the defense. Noah approaches one of the children to examine the strange necklace that is glowing around her neck. He recognizes the artifact as the demonic absorption cup, a terrifying tool that sucks the flow of magical energy from its victims, and which was the reason the Daskor were hated as cruel in their past life. Kyle shouts, warning that the number of monsters is too great and that they won't be able to withstand that pressure for much longer. The youngest son decides to use his own sacred demonic core to interfere with the magical frequency of that necklace and try to track down who is controlling the beasts. He focuses his hybrid energy and sends it directly to the magic ring, creating a spiritual tracking link. Noah closes his eyes and concentrates as hard as he can to trace the origin of that energy frequency. Thanks to the spell, he manages to locate a masked, red-eyed assassin who is hiding in the treetops, watching the group. The young man informs his allies that he will return in a moment and orders them to continue looking after the children's safety while he eliminates the mastermind. Noah darts forward like lightning through the trees, slicing through the wolves and orcs that try to block his path. Leaving a brilliant trail of purple and gold energy behind him, he sprints towards his rival's hideout. The young man moves so quickly that he appears as just a blur running among the tree trunks of the dark forest. He stops in a clearing and shouts defiantly, demanding that the enemy stop hiding and show their true face once and for all. The masked assassin leaps unexpectedly from a high branch, descending with his sword raised to deliver a deadly blow. However, Noah reacts with extraordinary reflexes and blocks his rival's ambush with his own sword. The intruder lands on the ground, showing surprise at the boy's quick reaction time. He praises Noah's perception, commenting that, despite being weakened, the young man truly displays the ruthless blood of the terrible Daskor family. The youngest son demands to know who gave the order for that cowardly attack, but the killer mockingly replies that he would never reveal that information. Noah smirks and coldly warns that he will use force to make him open his mouth one way or another. The two warriors engage in direct combat, exchanging extremely rapid sword blows in the middle of the forest. Feeling the immense pressure of the boy's attacks, the masked assassin wonders in surprise if that overwhelming power truly comes from an ordinary demonic. Noah simply stares back at him and replies that even he doesn't fully understand the nature of that power yet. The intruder takes a frustrated step back while the boy stands firm, enveloped by his brilliant hybrid energy. Without wasting any time, the assassin channels his hidden forces and begins activating the second form of his dark, shadowy style. Several blades of red energy begin to materialize in the air around the masked warrior. The man conjures up the technique of flying shadow blades, preparing the deadly shot against his target. He hurls a barrage of energy daggers at Noah, forcing the boy to react quickly. The young heir leaps and performs precise dodges in the air to avoid the first sharp projectiles. Using his sword with incredible speed, Noah manages to deflect the remaining daggers that were flying towards him. The boy lets out a groan of exertion from the impact and quickly decides to use his assessment skill to analyze his opponent's condition. The assassin taunts him by questioning where all that former confidence went, while Noah sees on the screen that his enemy is called Darius Zahard and possesses a 5-star demonic core. The young man analyzes that although Darius's control over the core is excellent, his swordsmanship is flawed, concluding that his best chance is to close the distance to fight up close. Darius unleashes a new wave of flying blades, but Noah charges headlong toward his rival, dodging each attack. He deflects another projectile with his weapon and continues advancing relentlessly through the clearing. The boy firmly plants his foot on the ground to gain momentum and launch himself towards his opponent. Noah leaps over an energy explosion and initiates his aerial attack move. He makes a diagonal slash with his sword in the air, aiming to strike the assassin's guard. Darius raises his swords in time and easily blocks the aerial attack, generating a loud metallic crack. The intruder grins arrogantly from behind his mask, commenting that it was an obvious attack and easy to deal with. However, an unexpected burst of red and gold energy strikes Darius's back in the blink of an eye. The killer is shocked by the pain of his wounds and wonders unbelievably what just happened there. Noah coldly reveals that this is a special technique of his hybrid style of light and shadow. The boy concentrates his power to the maximum as he prepares to deliver the decisive move. Activating the light and dark step technique, Noah moves like a flash of light and disappears before his opponent. Darius's eyes widened as he realized that young Daskor had instantly teleported behind him. The assassin twists his body in despair, trying to raise his sword to block the impending attack. However, the boy is much faster and slides his blade across his rival's chest, mocking him for being too slow. Darius lets out a cry of excruciating pain as a large amount of blood gushes from his sliced chest. He drops his swords and braces himself on the ground with difficulty, coughing up a lot of blood from the deep wound. Severely weakened, the invader tremulously asks how the young man could possibly know that secret combat technique. Noah mentally reflects that he understood the principles of the techniques when facing Julia, and that his hybrid core is capable of replicating the styles of both rival families. He knows that simply imitating the moves isn't enough if he wants to achieve absolute strength. The boy understands that the true value of his power will only be revealed when he masters exclusive techniques that belong solely to his sacred demonic core. Noah points his gleaming sword at his rival's neck and demands to know who ordered the assassination. Darius gritted his teeth furiously and warned menacingly that he shouldn't celebrate victory so soon. Suddenly, the killer pulls out a bottle containing a mysterious potion and quickly consumes it in one gulp. Noah goes on high alert when he notices the strange chemical reaction that begins to occur with his opponent. Darius lets out a roar of deep pain as his body begins to undergo a bizarre and uncontrolled mutation. His muscles expand grotesquely, and his skin takes on a monstrous green color. The warrior's face is completely distorted, revealing sharp fangs and red eyes gleaming with pure killer instinct. The mutant beast lets out a deafening roar that makes the entire surrounding forest tremble. Noah recoils tensely, immediately recognizing that the enemy used a forbidden bestialization drug to increase his power. The monster Darius lunges at the boy with absolutely devastating speed and violence. The boy assumes his most solid defensive stance, covering his sword with intense currents of hybrid energy. The beast unleashes a colossal claw strike that collides with Noah's blade, creating a gigantic blast of wind in the courtyard. The young heir struggles to withstand the impact and realizes that his rival's strength and speed have risen to an absurd level, fearing that his sword will break if he continues only to block. The monster lets out an insane laugh and mocks the boy, challenging him to see how much longer he can endure that punishment. The colossal creature continues to unleash a relentless rain of heavy blows against young Dasquer. With its red eyes blazing with fury, the monster focuses its next claw attack on Noah's head. The beast executes a violent diagonal slash, but the boy manages to dodge by crouching swiftly at the last second. The monster delivers another crushing downward punch, and Noah performs a quick roll to the side to escape being crushed by the beast's brutal force. The mutant monster leaps from a great height with clenched fists, crushing Noah with all its brute force. The creature's devastating attack shatters the ground, but the young man manages to jump high enough to avoid the impact. Noah realizes he can't just keep dodging blows forever in the midst of that intense aerial battle. He performs a spectacular acrobatic maneuver and lands firmly on the ground, ready to act. The young man plans to create an opening in his opponent's relentless defense, knowing that his evasive maneuvers have a limit. At that moment, he firmly gripped the hilt of his sword, which began to intensely channel its hybrid power. The mutant advances, laughing from above, mocking the boy and asking if he has finally despaired at the enormous difference in strength. The terrifying creature quickly approaches Noah from behind, bellowing that it will end the fight right then and there. Instead of backing away, the boy remains calm and simply extends his hand to activate a mysterious ring on his finger. The artifact in his hand instantly emits a blinding glow. A pink hexagonal barrier materializes in the air, blocking the monster's devastating attack. The magical defense not only blocks the blow, but also generates a violent shockwave that throws the giant far away. Noah smiles confidently as he realizes that, with the energy of his hybrid core, he can finally recreate his old techniques from before reincarnating. The young man adopts an imposing stance and begins to concentrate all his power on the blade of the sword. He leaps toward the monster, which is still dangling in midair. The boy raises his weapon with both hands to begin his unprecedented technique, a blend of sacred and demonic styles. With a focused and fierce gaze, he channels the merging of his forces to deliver the final blow. Noah executes the dual polarity single blade technique, splitting his opponent in half with a gigantic beam of energy. The devastating impact of the blow generates a massive explosion that sweeps everything around the clearing in the forest. Noah sighs in relief as he sees the fight is over, acknowledging that the ring saved him at just the right moment. He observes the Ring of Absolute Repulsion, an item capable of nullifying an enemy attack and unleashing a powerful shockwave against the aggressor. The young man decides it's time to return to support Kyle and the rest of the group who stayed behind. Meanwhile, the elite guards continue to bravely fight against the relentless horde of ferocious beasts. Kyle grits his teeth in frustration as he realizes he is reaching the limit of his strength due to extreme exhaustion. A giant orc takes advantage of the moment of weakness and raises a spiky club to crush the instructor. The elite warrior's eyes widen as he realizes he won't have time to dodge the deadly blow. Suddenly, the monster's attack is mysteriously interrupted midair, leaving Kyle confused. The warrior looks surprised to notice that the orc's heavy club had been cut with extreme precision before striking him. The elite guards looked around in astonishment as they realized that all the creatures surrounding them had fallen defeated at the same time. Noah calmly walks towards the group and asks if everyone is all right. One of the guards confirms that everyone survived, still trying to understand what just happened. Noah explains that he eliminated the killer responsible for driving the beasts insane, leaving the men shocked by the revelation. The young heir crouches down next to one of the children to deactivate the magic collar, commenting that he still doesn't know who hired the assassin. With the end of the spell, the collars that drain the children's energy finally break and fall off. He becomes thoughtful, knowing he needs to act cautiously to unmask the true mastermind behind this cruel attack. After the mission is complete, Noah returns to the imposing Dasquer family mansion. The young man laments that innocent children nearly died because of family disputes and vows to find the culprit. Lydia suggests that young Eve, who acts as the family's official informant, might know something useful about the case. Noah focuses his attention on the main objective, aware that he urgently needs a clue to get started. However, while walking through the palace gardens, he is interrupted by a young man with blonde hair. C sternly warns that even though he is family, Noah is not allowed to enter that place. The two brothers face each other in a tense silence at the entrance to the property. Noah knows he needs to talk to his sister Eve to get information about the previous attacks. The maid Lydia had already commented that if anyone knew who was behind the attacks, it would certainly be that girl. The boy releases a dense aura and coldly orders Cease to get out of his way once and for all. The blonde brother places his hand on his sword and warns that, as Eve's bodyguard, he cannot allow someone who exudes such bloodlust to pass through. Cease shouts angrily, making it clear that he doesn't trust Noah at all. Noah accepts the challenge and begins to draw his own sword with determination. The young man warns that if there is no other choice, he will force his way through using physical force. Seize assumes a fighting stance and unsheathes his blade, ready to halt his younger brother's advance. Seize quickly advances, delivering an aerial strike against Noah, who watches as she approaches while his magical energy begins to manifest. The two men's swords clashed violently, generating a huge flash of bright sparks from the force of the impact. Noah focuses his purple gaze through the locked blades, firmly resisting the physical pressure of his brother's blow. The youngest child leaps back nimbly, creating distance as his hybrid energy floats around him. Seize watches Noah land lightly on the patio floor, maintaining a perfectly balanced guard stance. Suddenly, the second son of the Daskor family raises his hand to concentrate a dense, magical energy of red color. Activating his earth magic, Seize channels his power to make immense stone stakes violently erupt from the ground towards his rival. Noah is surprised to find himself surrounded by sharp stone spears that surge from the ground at high speed. Without losing control, the boy prepares to deliver a circular blow and slice through the rock obstacles in front of him. With a swift and precise movement of his energy sword, he destroys all the stone stakes at once, turning them into dust. Seize wastes no time and activates another special technique, causing a new weapon of solid rock to emerge directly from the cracked ground. Noah observes with great curiosity the immense sword made purely of solid stone that his brother has just summoned. Holding his new weapon firmly, the young blonde man lunges at Noah with impressive speed. Noah remains calm and raises his blade to block his opponent's heavy attack. The two heirs engage in an intense exchange of rapid blows, with metallic sparks illuminating the entire combat scene. Seize narrows his eyes with extreme seriousness, focused on breaking through his younger brother's almost impenetrable defense. He performs a series of acrobatic cuts in the air, forcing Noah to use all his agility to avoid being hit. The young nobleman realizes that his brother possesses varied and unpredictable attack patterns, deciding to use his spiritual assessment ability to better analyze his rival. The blue holographic screen unfolds before him, revealing that Seize Daskor possesses 8-star level attributes in physical ability and swordsmanship, as well as a 5-star demonic core. Noticing that Seize's demonic core is inferior to his physical strength, Noah deduces that he compensates for this weakness by combining various swordsmanship techniques and elemental magic. To resolve that dispute once and for all, Noah decides to use the brute force of his own sacred demonic style. He assumes his battle stance and prepares to unleash the powerful dance of the Sword of Light and Shadow. A huge, brilliant column of hybrid energy erupts from the young man, illuminating the entire courtyard with overwhelming force. Seize is utterly shocked to witness the magnitude and pressure of that power, wondering if it truly is part of Noah's demonic core. Without giving his brother time to react, Noah plants his foot firmly on the ground and leaps forward like lightning. Seize reacts quickly and activates the second form of his shadow lightning style to try and stop the boy's advance. Immersing his sword in dark red electricity, the blonde heir executes a swift counterattack focused on an instantaneous slash. Noah immediately recognizes the dangerous shadow lightning style technique his brother is using against him. The young man remembers the important lessons from his instructor Kyle Olson, who had taught him the basic characteristics of each fighting style in the Daskor family, precisely to prepare him for these confrontations. Noah mentally analyzes that the swift attack is considered an inevitable blow due to its extreme speed, while Seize ironically praises his younger brother's knowledge. The blonde man gives a wry smile and points out that theoretical knowledge is useless if he is unable to keep up with the pace of a real fight. Noah simply roars defiantly and raises his gleaming blade with all the determination to accept the direct confrontation. Seize advances, his eyes gleaming gold, delivering the electric blow with maximum force against the young master. An immense and terrifying wave of red energy engulfs the entire battlefield as the techniques collide. Noah stands firmly in the center of the courtyard amidst the storm of electrical sparks falling around him. The boy lets out a cry of extreme effort as he tries to channel his hybrid power to withstand the pressure of the relentless attack. A gigantic and devastating explosion of red and purple energy erupts from the point of impact between the two heirs. The enormous dome of destructive energy begins to slowly dissipate, revealing the silhouettes of the combatants amidst the dust. The strong gale generated by the clash of swords sweeps across the mansion courtyard, covering the place with thick gray smoke. When the dust settles, Noah reappears in his classic guard stance, keeping his sacred demonic core activated for protection. However, he notices small cuts and traces of red electricity burning the sleeves of his elegant clothes. The youngest lets out a soft groan of exhaustion as Seize stares at him from a distance, maintaining his fighting stance intact. Noah becomes quite frustrated when he realizes that not even his sword dance of light and shadow was able to perfectly block the impact of that swift attack. He understands that the techniques he merely copies and imitates from his brothers have clear limitations, and always prove inferior to his true, original strength. The young man realizes he urgently needs to create an original technique that integrates his sacred demonic core, but wonders how he will be able to accomplish this feat. Suddenly, Seize relaxes his posture and sheathes the stone sword, saying that's enough for today, leaving Noah quite confused by the sudden interruption. At that moment, the reserved sister Eve Dasquer appears in the doorway of the hall, silently and calmly observing the two's training. The group then decides to leave the training yard and head towards one of the luxurious living rooms inside the enormous Dasquer mansion. Seated comfortably on the living room sofas, Eve breaks the ice and seriously asks what the real reason was that led the two brothers to start that dispute in the garden. Seize justifies himself by pointing to Noah and explaining that his younger brother approached him exuding clear murderous intent, adding that, as the family's bodyguard, he couldn't simply ignore that threat. Noah wonders, intrigued, why a member of the feared Dasquer family would need a personal bodyguard. With a serene and reserved look, Eve calmly confesses that she doesn't have much aptitude for physical combat. Seize then questions Noah about the true purpose of his visit, warning him that Eve has chosen not to be part of the family's bloody succession war. Interrupting the conversation, Eve gets straight to the point and deduces that the young man came to her only to find out who was responsible for hiring the assassins who attacked him. Noah is surprised by the accuracy of the deduction and immediately asks how she managed to obtain that confidential information so quickly. The girl gives a slight, mysterious smile and states confidently that there are very few things in this world that she truly doesn't know. She admits she would love to reveal the secret on a silver platter, as it's a request from her beloved younger brother, but indicates that things won't be so easy. Understanding the situation immediately, Noah proposes a business deal and asks what she wants in exchange for that valuable information. Eve ponders for a moment and asks if he is aware of the existence of the legendary Infinite Library. This library is known as a gigantic, mysterious labyrinth whose full structure remains unknown to humanity, housing legendary knowledge that no one has ever been able to access. Several scholars and adventurers ended up founding an entire city around the place, knowing that the depths of the labyrinth held immense dangers and increasingly brutal monsters. Eve then reveals her demand, asking Noah to enter the labyrinth and bring her a specific copy known as the Book of Eternal Depths. The boy immediately recognizes the name and remembers that in his past life, that mysterious work was responsible for completely revolutionizing all known magical theory. Noah recalls that, during the terrible apocalyptic war against the invaders in the future, the teachings of that book helped save countless human lives. He laments that even with all this help, the world ended up being destroyed, but he realizes that obtaining this knowledge much sooner than expected could radically change everyone's destiny. Without hesitation, Noah accepts the mission and assures his sister that he will bring the book back no matter what. The two seal the trade agreement with a firm handshake, formalizing the dangerous alliance. Shortly after, Noah begins his journey toward the mysterious city that houses the labyrinth. Inside the carriage, Lydia and Selena accompany the young master on his journey, with Lydia showing considerable enthusiasm for the expedition outside the mansion. The vehicle finally arrives at the gates of Arcanum, an imposing medieval city that was built entirely around the colossal library tower. Noah disembarks and walks through the bustling cobblestone streets of the merchant city. He reflects on the absurd complexity of that labyrinth and realizes that he will urgently need to hire an experienced local guide who knows the way so he doesn't end up lost forever. The young nobleman enters one of the region's bustling taverns to begin his search for a suitable assistant. As he walks down a more secluded alley, he realizes he is being discreetly watched by some suspicious figures in the city. Meanwhile, the scene cuts back to the luxurious main palace of the Dasquer family. Eve relaxes peacefully in her private living room while sipping a cup of hot tea. The butler opens the doors to the drawing room and politely announces the arrival of an unexpected visitor. A stylishly dressed young man enters the room in an imposing manner, immediately drawing Eve's attention. Revealing himself as Scar Dasquer, the third heir displays his characteristic cynical smile and announces that he has come to ask some crucial questions about Noah. Eve watches him suspiciously while maintaining her impassive posture in the face of her brother's sudden visit. Scar settles comfortably on the sofa in front of her, preparing to begin the business conversation. The young woman points out that it is an extremely rare and unusual event for him to decide to visit her without any prior notice. The young redhead falsely explains that he came there only to request his sister's support, an extensive network of information. Scar looks around and notices C's absence, prompting Eve to explain that their father entrusted their second son with an urgent mission outside the mansion. Upon hearing this, the red-haired heir gives a dark and intimidating smile, maliciously remarking that she is completely defenseless at the moment. Without showing any sign of fear, Eve takes another sip of her tea and calmly retorts that she has competent enough subordinates to guarantee her safety. Scar praises his sister's composure and decides to get straight to the point, asking if she already knows what information he wants to obtain about Noah. The young redhead explains that he wants to discover the truth behind the impressive increase in strength that Noah demonstrated when confronting Julia shortly after waking up from his illness. He clenches his fist with great determination and demands to decipher, once and for all, the hidden secret behind the youngest son's sudden power. Eve provokes him by reminding him that Noah was able to easily defeat even the elite group of assassins sent by Scar, prompting the young man to praise the efficiency of his spy network. The informant calmly places her cup back on the saucer and begins to coldly dictate her conditions. She makes it very clear that she does not intend to share any valuable information that could directly interfere in the dispute for leadership of the family. Eve explains that if one side benefits in the succession war, the other siblings will surely try to take her life, and that is why she needs to maintain a position of absolute neutrality with everyone. Scar narrows his green eyes with considerable irritation and asks menacingly if she is really rejecting his offer of cooperation. The young heiress calmly retorts, asking if he truly believes he possesses something of sufficient value to justify making her risk her neutral and secure position in the family. Faced with his sister's question, the red-haired boy simply gives another sadistic and enigmatic smile. He warns her in a threatening tone that she will understand the situation very soon, while a shadowy silhouette with red eyes emerges right behind the young woman on the sofa. The scene cuts back to the colossal tower of the Infinite Library in the bustling city of Arcanum. Oblivious to the new problems at the mansion, Noah continues to stroll calmly through the bustling local market. The young nobleman continues towards his destination, entering a narrow corridor between the tall stone buildings to begin his search for the legendary book. Noah opens the door of a small shop and enters decisively, while the sound of the entrance bell echoes through the room. He walks around the place thoughtfully and feels a strong sense of nostalgia as he contemplates the various bottles and shelves of potions around him. The shop owner appears behind the counter and politely informs the shop that the magic tool store is currently closed, revealing his name as Osrek Harves. The young man clarifies that his goal there is not to make purchases, formally requesting that Osrek act as his personal guide to explore the dangerous Infinite Library. Osrek immediately refuses the request, saying he has retired from that position, but Noah insists, pointing out that he is recognized throughout the city as the person who best knows the complex paths of the labyrinth. The statement visibly irritates and embitters the merchant, causing him to laugh derisively and ask the young man not to make him laugh with that best guide title. Noah finds that curt reaction quite strange, because he remembers that in his old timeline, that man was known precisely for loving that labyrinth more than any other and never refusing that kind of work. Intrigued by the drastic change in attitude, the youngest of the Daskor family directly questions whether there is any specific reason that made him abandon his profession. Osrek slams his fist on the wooden counter and roars that this is his personal problem, and that there is absolutely nothing an outsider can do to help. Immediately afterwards, the merchant lowers his head with a deeply distressed and guilty expression. He takes a deep breath and sincerely apologizes for his outburst, admitting that he has been extremely on edge lately. At that moment, the small bell on the front door rings again shrilly, indicating the arrival of a new person. Noah is completely shocked to hear elegant footsteps and recognize Julia's voice calmly asking if he has been doing well since their last meeting. The warrior with long silver hair waves with a wry smile, her signature sword latched at her waist. Julia explains that she spotted him by chance while carrying out a mission in the region and decided to follow him, leading the boy to mentally conclude that she was actually just watching his every move. Osrek is completely stunned by the newcomer's identity and asks, startled, if she is indeed the famous and feared warrior Julia Daskor, receiving immediate confirmation. The shopkeeper puts his hand on the youngest child's shoulder and calls him a brat, prompting Noah to immediately correct him by stating his full name. Knowing of the young woman's immense power, Osrek completely changes his mind and announces that he will accept being the expedition's guide, provided that Julia also agrees to accompany them on the descent. Noah stares at him with considerable suspicion and points out that he was vehemently refusing the job just seconds before, concluding that there must be a strong hidden motive behind this sudden change. Without giving further explanation, Osrek asks the two brothers to accompany him to the back of his store. Upon entering the private quarters, Noah and Julia find a woman lying unconscious on a double bed. Sitting beside the bed with a melancholy look, the merchant reveals that it all started about a month ago. He recounts that his beloved wife was struck by a terrible and dark curse, conjured by a bizarre monster from the depths of the library. This dark magic has placed her in a deep, lethal sleep that slowly drains her life energy, until it leads to her ultimate death. Noah considers that the quickest way to undo the spell would be to defeat the monster that cast it, and Osric agrees, but laments that all the experienced adventurers he hired failed miserably and were defeated by the creature. The merchant bows deeply before Julia, begging her to help him save his wife, and the silver-haired young woman calmly replies that she wouldn't mind helping, but imposes a specific condition. She points to her younger brother and declares that Noah will also have to actively participate in the fight against the dangerous monster in the maze. Julia places her hand on the youngest son's shoulder and reveals with a smile that witnessing his true combat methods up close is her only condition for accepting the mission. Noah senses his older sister's ulterior motives and notices that she clearly continues to doubt the extent of her true combat abilities. With few alternatives, the young man turns to the merchant and confirms that he is trusting his experience as the official guide for the expedition. Osric clenches his fist enthusiastically and excitedly assures them that they can leave all navigation entirely under his responsibility. Standing before the immense entrance of the infinite library, Noah asks if it was really wise for her to abandon her official mission to accompany him, and Julia replies that the situation is under control. The warrior maintains her cunning smile and warns that the most important thing for her at that moment is to unravel the great mystery that her brother has been hiding from everyone. She confesses that the feeling from the training yard won't leave her head, explaining that it seemed as if a different and mysterious force beyond the conventional demonic core had blocked her training blade. Julia confidently states that she will use that labyrinth to force the boy to reveal his secret, making Noah mentally recognize just how dangerous the sharp perception of someone of his sister's caliber is. Osric emerges from the crowd carrying a colossal backpack and apologizes for the brief delay in preparing the supplies. Without wasting any more time, the trio joins forces and advances with determination towards the immense doors of the mysterious sanctuary of books. Upon entering, they find themselves in a huge, bustling lobby, filled with adventurers preparing for their missions and mission reception desks. Osric officially registers the group at the control desk and emphasizes that they will have to fully rely on each other's abilities to survive. In the distance, some adventurers whisper in fear as they recognize Osric, tragically commenting that the people accompanying him will surely be the next fatal victims of that cursed place. Ignoring the rumors, the group positions themselves before the gigantic white gate that marks the official beginning of the endless labyrinth. Osric places his hands on the imposing stone structure and begins to push open the immense doors with considerable physical effort. The large gate slowly opens, releasing a mysterious bluish glow that illuminates the entire entrance hall. Maintaining their complete focus, the trio takes their first step towards the misty interior of the dungeon. Noah gazes at the stunning and monumental view of the place, impressed by the endless rows of bookshelves that seem to tear through the dungeon's skies. Julia observes the confusing staircases and agrees that it would be absolutely impossible to navigate without the help of a professional, due to the labyrinthine design of the structure. Suspension bridges and endless flights of wooden stairs connect the various sections of shelves in that ancient monument. Suddenly, Noah's attention is captured by something unexpected, and his eyes widen in shock as he looks at the wall of the room. The young nobleman comes across an immense ancient fresco carved in stone, depicting exactly the terrifying figure of the armored colossus that destroyed the world in his future. Noah becomes completely tense and realizes, with considerable apprehension, that this historic dungeon holds ancient secrets directly connected to the apocalyptic invasion of his original timeline. He realizes that exploring the depths of that immense library might be the perfect key to finding some clue that will help him defeat the invaders in the future. The young heir gives a discreet, sideways smile and decides to resume marching alongside his companions. Noah focuses entirely on his mission and mentally reinforces that their only true objective there is to obtain the Book of Eternal Depths. As they walk through the first floor of the dungeon, Osric explains to the group that the deeper they descend into the labyrinth, the rarer and more dangerous the tomes they find will be. Consulting his detailed map, the guide estimates that the forbidden relic they seek must be kept around the 20th floor of the labyrinth. Noah silently ponders the profoundness of that destiny, remembering that the 20th floor represents the highest point ever reached by any human being. The trio approaches a large, glowing magic circle drawn on the stone floor of the corridor. They position themselves right in the center of the runic structure to activate the floor transition spell. Suddenly, 3 gigantic monsters armed with shields and spears materialize in the courtyard before them. Osric explains that these beasts always appear to protect access to the staircases and asks if the young master can deal with the threat. With complete composure, Noah grips the hilt of his sword and vows to resolve the situation without any problem. He moves like a golden and purple blur across the field, delivering extremely precise cuts against the attackers. The young warrior finishes the attack with elegance and sheathes his weapon with a sharp click. Seconds later, all the beasts collapse in defeat onto the stone floor of the palace, unable to muster any reaction. Osric is completely impressed by how easy the victory was, and suggests they keep advancing quickly before more creatures appear. Upon reaching the 10th floor of the Infinite Library, Osric asks the siblings to maintain absolute secrecy about the special path he is about to reveal. The guide approaches one of the immense bookshelves and pulls out a specific book that serves as a secret lever. The mechanism opens a secret passage hidden in the wooden wall, revealing a new, dimly lit corridor. Osric reveals that this hidden portal serves as an emergency shortcut capable of drastically shortening the descent to the depths. The group gathers around the new runic circle to begin the long-distance transfer. The portal activates, releasing an intense torrent of bluish energy that completely envelops the trio. A bright, blinding flash of white light fills the entire teleportation room. Noah shields his eyes with his hand as he quickly adapts to the abrupt change in light. They reappear before an immense stone hall, and Osric confirms that they are now on the transitional boundary between the 19th and 20th floors. Julia steps forward with a confident smile and points out that the guardian monster of that final area must be waiting for them just ahead. The trio enters the immense circular arena on the 20th floor, where a powerful runic spell glows intensely on the ground. The floor begins to shake violently as a huge amount of dust and debris falls from the hall's ceiling. Gigantic black roots covered in a terrifying dark magical energy begin to sprout rapidly from the cracked earth. A colossal creature in the form of a corrupted tree reveals itself, displaying several bright red eyes that glare furiously at the invaders. Osric is thrown into utter panic upon recognizing the monster as a dangerous ancient Trent, shouting that the last time he was there the beast was just an ordinary, low-level guard. Julia draws her sword without showing any sign of fear, ignoring the guide's desperate pleas that this is an S-rank threat that would require an entire army to defeat. The silver-haired warrior gives a provocative smile and ironically questions why the guide thinks 2 people would be needed to resolve that fight. Julia assumes her most imposing fighting stance and declares that her own skills will be more than enough to slice that creature apart on her own. Without hesitation, she launches herself at high speed towards the giant monster made of corrupted wood. The ancient Trent reacts by firing dozens of sharp, spear-like branches at the intruder. Julia performs acrobatic and dodging maneuvers in the air, nimbly evading each of the beast's powerful attacks. The young heiress uses the monster's own roots as platforms for support and runs towards the creature's main trunk. She executes a swift slash towards the beast's eyes to temporarily blind her opponent. However, the creature's gigantic central eye opens menacingly and glows intensely, preparing for a close-range attack. The warrior leaps back and lands on the ground, admitting with frustration that the wooden carcass of that monster is extraordinarily resistant. Osric desperately shouts that the creature's skin is as hard as steel, and insists that they should retreat and bring mages to help them in the battle. Before she can dodge, dozens of black vines rapidly emerge from the ground and begin to wrap around the young woman's legs. Julia finds herself completely immobilized and trapped by the dark ramifications of the ancient Trent. The giant monster raises its colossal wooden arms to crush its captured opponent once and for all. Noah panics when he sees his older sister in imminent danger and runs towards her, letting out a warning cry. The cocoon of roots closes completely around the silver-haired warrior, concealing her from the sight of her allies. However, a massive and devastating explosion of dark fire erupts from the cocoon of branches when she activates the 5th form of her flame style. Julia triumphantly reappears in the center of the clearing, wearing spectacular armor made entirely of pure dark red fire. Noah is utterly shocked by his older sister's transformation and wonders if it's the legendary and destructive flame armor of Daskor swordsmanship. With a fierce, murderous gaze beneath her fiery helmet, Julia assumes her most devastating attack stance and initiates the activation of the 1st form of her special combat technique. Julia's blade is completely engulfed in a dark and violent fire as her dance of dark flames is activated. The elder Trent writhes before the young woman, preparing his immense wooden branches to try and withstand the approaching fury. Wearing her flaming armor, the warrior charges straight ahead like a red-hot comet toward the enemy's torso. She unleashes a flurry of quick, destructive slashes, slicing and incinerating the monster's steel branches in the blink of an eye. Julia leaps toward the core of the ancient Trent, leaving a vast trail of destruction and smoke behind her. With a furious war cry, she brings down her flaming sword to deliver the decisive blow. A gigantic blade of red fire cuts through the air, splitting the dungeon's atmosphere in two. The powerful blow strikes the monster's massive trunk squarely, slicing the wooden beast from end to end in a massive explosion. Julia walks back calmly through the burning wreckage and proudly states that her sword would never stop against something as hard as steel. However, Osric lets out a scream of absolute panic, warning that the fight is not over yet. Before she can react, a surviving root emerges from the earth and wraps itself tightly around the warrior's ankle. Several other black branches begin to sprout and quickly envelop Julia's entire body at once. Feeling trapped once more, the young woman realizes that the beast possesses an almost infinite, instantaneous regeneration, unless every vestige of its structure is completely reduced to ashes. A gigantic mountain of branches and dark vines collapses on Julia, burying her completely under the weight of the wood. Noah watches the fight unfold with concern, but hears his sister's muffled voice channeling the third form of her flame style. Realizing the magnitude of what is to come, the boy quickly grabs the guide's hand to pull him out of the line of impact. He drags Osric away at high speed, yelling for his companion to run as fast as possible for cover. Trapped in the center of the cocoon of roots, Julia activates her maximum power and displays bright red eyes glowing intensely in the darkness. A devastating, explosive burst of dark flames erupts from the site, generating a heat wave that instantly pulverizes the entire wooden monster. Noah and Osric continue running desperately down the corridor, while an immense shockwave of red fire chases after them. The immense blast of heat sweeps across the entrance to the next hall, throwing the two directly onto the cold stone floor. As they stood up, slightly dazed, the guide asked, alarmed, if the young woman's plan was really to incinerate the entire dungeon to prevent any regeneration of the beast. Amidst the dense fog of heat and smoke remaining from the battle, Julia's imposing silhouette begins to slowly approach them. With her impeccable posture and without a single scratch, the silver-haired warrior calmly invites them to continue their exploration. Osric is completely incredulous, unable to believe that she was able to annihilate an S-rank monster single-handedly without needing any help. Noah mentally recognizes the lethality of his family's dark flame style, knowing that it is the most specialized technique in pure attack power on the entire continent. Although it consumes vital energy at an accelerated rate, the devastating force of that technique justifies its reputation as the greatest of all humanity. The group finally reaches the 20th floor of the labyrinth and begins to scour the immense shelves in search of the legendary book. Suddenly, Noah focuses his gaze on a specific book on the shelf, and his eyes widen as he makes a crucial discovery. With great enthusiasm, the boy removes the Book of Eternal Depths from the shelf and celebrates, having finally found the forbidden artifact that his sister Eve asked for. Julia recalls that all that remains is to find the creature responsible for casting the terrible curse on Osric's wife, and the guide confirms that the monster usually inhabits that very area. Noah questions whether monsters shouldn't only appear in the transition areas between floors, and Julia clarifies that this particular beast represents the only known exception to the rule. The trio continued walking on high alert through the dark corridors of the dungeon, keeping their hands close to their swords. Noah approaches an old wooden painting depicting a medieval knight battling a giant monster in a village. He notices an old book resting on the side table just below the painting and decides to pick it up to examine its contents. Suddenly, a terrifying whispered voice emerges from the shadows behind him, saying that it has finally found him, putting the boy on high alert. Noah quickly flips through the yellowed pages of the diary to see if there are any important clues noted. He slams the book shut and turns around with considerable tension as he feels an overwhelming presence approaching from behind. Without wasting any time, both Noah and Julia draw their weapons and assume defensive stances to protect the defenseless guide. A fearsome monster in black armor with a grotesque arm of corrupted flesh emerges from behind the bookshelves, revealing itself before the group. Osric immediately recognizes his opponent and points angrily, shouting desperately that that damned armored monster was the one truly responsible for cursing his beloved wife. Noah channels his hybrid energy into the sword and warns that it's more than time to eliminate that armored creature once and for all. However, Julia steps in front of her younger brother and firmly orders him to take a step back and not interfere in the fight. Enveloped in a dense storm of red flames, the warrior warns that she will personally take care of the battle against the armored monster. The monster knight reacts immediately and charges forward, delivering a heavy blow with its colossal sword against the young woman. Julia raises her flaming blade to block the impact of her armored opponent's charge. The warrior gritted her teeth as she felt the immense physical strength of her opponent pushing her guard down. The terrifying clash between the two energy weapons generates a violent shockwave that causes books to begin falling from the shelves all around. Julia is pushed back by her opponent's brute force, sliding across the stone floor as smoke rises around her. Deep in breath and leaning on her sword, the silver warrior wipes a trickle of blood from her mouth and realizes, worried, that a long battle against that armored monster will represent an enormous danger of death for everyone. Julia leaps at high speed from one shelf to another, readjusting her posture to initiate an aerial counterattack. She descends like a lightning bolt enveloped in dark fire, straight towards the rear of the armored monster. Even wounded and spitting up a little blood, the silver warrior focuses all her strength on the hilt of her sword. The clash of swords generates a violent explosion of red sparks in the middle of the library corridor. Noah watches the high-speed combat from afar, trying to keep up with his older sister's extremely fast movements. The boy is impressed and wonders if that armored opponent was really able to perfectly repel an attack that he himself could barely track with his eyes. The two warriors continue exchanging heavy blows in the center of the circular arena, generating overwhelming waves of heat. Julia steps back and slides across the rocky ground, quickly regaining her balance so as not to give the enemy any opening. She digs her hand into the ground and conjures a large orange runic circle to activate the second form of her flame style. A massive vortex of dark fire erupts from the ground, engulfing the armored monster in a brutal storm of flames. Osric celebrates, thinking the fight is finally over, but Noah interrupts him seriously, realizing that the threat is still active. Suddenly, the armored monster emerges unharmed from within the whirlwind of fire, delivering a devastating vertical slash. Julia hastily raises her sword to defend herself, but the violent impact throws it forcefully towards the ground. The adversary takes advantage of the retreat and grabs the warrior's shoulder with his grotesque, corrupted arm of flesh. He raises his immense stone blade to deliver the coup de grace to young Daskor. Julia's eyes widened in shock as she realized she was completely cornered and defenseless against the enemy. At this critical moment, Noah surges forward like a hybrid lightning bolt, crossing the entire arena to intervene in the fight. The boy throws himself in front of his sister and blocks the opponent's deadly blow with his own sword, while Julia falls to the ground groaning in pain. The young warrior tenses as he realizes that even the destructive power of his sister's dark flame techniques has caused no real damage to his rival. Noah focuses his purple gaze on the enemy's heavy black armor and notices, worried, that there isn't even a single scratch on the metal structure. Suddenly, the monster's helmet opens, revealing a macabre jaw full of sharp teeth that glows with an intense green energy. At the same time, Julia looks at her own arm and is terrified to notice that the area has been consumed by a dangerous green mist of curse. The armored opponent fires a gigantic and lethal blast of green, acid energy directly at the two brothers. Noah reacts with extraordinary reflexes, grabbing Julia by the torso and throwing himself to the ground to dodge the corrosive ray that grazes them. The destructive beam strikes the bookshelves at the back, creating a huge trail of dust and destruction throughout the dungeon. Noah helps his sister to her feet and tells her that he will fight by her side from now on, receiving a warning from her to be extremely careful with his rival's corrupted arm. She explains that any direct contact with that grotesque extremity will instantly transmit a corrosive curse, capable of paralyzing the victim's movements. The young woman admits with frustration that, due to the injury to her arm, she will not be able to channel enough energy to deliver a fatal blow on her own. Noah then turns to her with a serious look and warns her that he has a very special request to make before they resume fighting. From a distance, the armored opponent begins to concentrate yet another immense amount of green energy into its macabre maw. The boy asks Julia to allow the monster to fire that same corrosive blast one more time, making his sister smile slightly and comment on how risky that plan is. Julia accepts the plan and moves forward determined to tear off her rival's cursed arm, while Noah follows closely behind. The two heirs coordinate their movements perfectly, attacking the monster from opposite sides of the circular arena. The two energy swords collide simultaneously against the opponent's heavy metal structure. The combined impact generates an immense flash of red and gold light that temporarily blinds everyone in the room. A colossal column of sacred and demonic flames erupts from the ground at the point of collision of the techniques. Noah and Julia quickly jump back to distance themselves from the center of the enormous heat explosion. The two stand side by side in the stone arena, waiting tensely for the dust to settle. The armored monster lets out a monstrous roar of agony as it tries to rid itself of the flames, engulfing its metallic body. Julia shields her face from the fierce wind and acknowledges, impressed, the terrifying physical resilience of that cursed adversary. The creature suddenly leaps out of the smoke, delivering a downward blow with its enormous stone weapon. Julia leaps high into the air with extreme agility to dodge her rival's aerial attack. Noah positions himself in the rear and uses his gleaming sword to directly block his opponent's stone blade. The boy plants his foot firmly on the ground and forces his hybrid core to the maximum to withstand the overwhelming pressure from the enemy. He warns his sister to step away immediately while he struggles to maintain the blockade. Taking advantage of the opening created by her brother, Julia begins to spin in the air, accumulating energy to activate her second form of flames. She descends with a devastating vertical slash, enveloped in pure dark fire across the top of her rival's armor. The night monster reacts by opening its metallic jaws again to unleash another torrent of acidic green at point-blank range. Julia's eyes widen as she realizes her opponent's trap, and she desperately screams Noah's name when she sees that her brother is right in the line of fire of the deadly attack. Noah focuses all his spiritual energy and assumes a firm offensive stance with a wholly demonic style. He advances, unleashing the double polar blade technique, enveloping his weapon in an intense glow of mixed energy. The powerful attack hits the monster squarely, creating a massive explosion of golden light that illuminates the entire library hall. However, the boy notices a strange alteration in the physical reality around him when a dense white smoke envelops him. Noah suddenly finds himself in a vision where his blade pierces directly through the open jaw of his armored opponent. He grips the cable firmly as the creature struggles violently to try and break free from the hold. The young nobleman felt his body tremble at that bizarre sensation of mental space, realizing that the situation was becoming dangerous. Meanwhile, in the real world, the firestorm generated by Julia's technique continues to burn intensely. Julia lands nimbly on the ground and proudly announces that she considers the previous protection debt officially paid. Noah reflects anxiously as he notices that even his sister's strongest blow had no real effect, and he also realizes that her demonic core is close to being depleted. The young man bit his lip with considerable concern as he pondered whether the only safe option for them at that moment would be an immediate retreat. To make matters drastically worse, a second identical silhouette in heavy armor silently emerges from the shadows at the back of the hall. Noah and Julia's eyes widened in utter shock as they realized they would now have to face two of those terrifying guardians at the same time. In that moment of despair, a mysterious voice echoes directly in Noah's mind, ironically criticizing the lack of refinement in his combat techniques. The young man is suddenly transported to a vast, misty, white spiritual desert, where he finds himself alone wielding his sword. A brilliant point of golden light appears floating in front of him, while the spiritual voice analyzes that his two energies are mixed in an unbalanced way. Intrigued and on guard, the Daskor heir demands to know who the entity speaking to him is and exactly where they are located. The light expands, revealing that Noah is the first successor of the sacred demonic core to emerge in centuries, and the entity decides to give him a valuable combat tip to ensure his survival. As the royal monster raises his immense sword against the boys back in the library, the spiritual voice reveals the name of the ultimate move he must use. Julia screams desperately for her brother to move, but Noah remains motionless with a completely serene and focused expression. A blue holographic screen instantly activates in your mind, confirming the successor's awakening and unlocking full control of your power system. Noah gripped the handle of his weapon tightly as it began to be enveloped by an absurd amount of pure, golden, divine energy. A colossal column of electricity and golden flames erupts from the young nobleman, illuminating the entire 20th floor with a blinding glow. With his purple eyes gleaming intensely, Noah channels the devastating technique of the double celestial split against his opponents. He unleashes a storm of circular golden slashes that crisscross the entire combat arena at high speed. The two fearsome monsters in black armor are sliced and torn to pieces without managing to mount any kind of defense. Back in his mental space, Noah contemplates the immensity of that golden glow and finally understands the true and terrifying potential of his sacred demonic core. With an extremely confident look, the young nobleman mentally warns that now it will be his turn to return all the pressure he suffered twofold. Noah floats majestically in the center of the hall, while golden energy takes the form of immense wings of light around him, pulverizing the remains of his adversaries. A new holographic message appears indicating that the spiritual invitation to connect has been officially accepted. The boy reappears standing on a floating platform in the desert of clouds, holding a completely orange sword and looking around confused. He examines the energy blade of his weapon and concludes with relief that he has indeed successfully inherited the entirety of that spiritual power. A huge and imposing golden silhouette begins to slowly materialize among the golden clouds directly in front of you. The entity reveals itself as a legendary warrior with long blonde hair, wearing high-ranking golden armor. Noah questions the identity of that majestic man, and the warrior formally introduces himself as Zex Valmuth, the ancient and legendary wielder of that very core. Noah asks if the power he inherited is the same as Zex's, But the ancient warrior clarifies that the two separate energies that currently exist in the world are nothing more than defective products. Zex explains that, in the mythological age of the gods, terrible invaders from another world emerged to spread destruction, and that divine power was granted to humans precisely to confront them. The ancient warrior tragically reveals that despite the core's immense power, humanity was ultimately defeated due to senseless internal conflicts among humans themselves, leaving the young man intrigued. He details that the other human leaders feared the overwhelming influence of the divine core, and ended up cowardly assassinating all its bearers from behind. To prevent that legendary force from resurfacing, the traitors decided to divide the power of the divine core into two imperfect fragments, thus creating the sacred core and the demonic core of the rival families. Noah puts the pieces together and realizes that the two opposing forces were originally a single energy, understanding why he was able to inherit divine power by possessing both souls within his body. The boy then asks one last, crucial question. Would Zex have been able to annihilate the invaders if the humans' betrayal had never happened? Zex stares at him with absolute seriousness and proudly assures him that yes, if they were united they would have wiped all the invaders off the face of the earth with extreme ease. Noah clenches his fist with great determination, realizing that by mastering that primal force, he will finally have a real chance to rewrite the world's apocalyptic destiny. However, the ancient warrior warns that the boy's current level is still insufficient for the final battle, advising him to defeat increasingly stronger opponents to raise his core to its absolute limit. With an extremely audacious smile on his face, Noah readily accepts the advice and says he will gladly meet this challenge. Zex gives a satisfied smile and suggests that they begin their evolution training with a simple strength test. The boy begins to be enveloped by gigantic wings of pure golden electricity, as Zex challenges him to prove his worth by clearing the scum surrounding him in the royal dungeon. Back in the reality of the infinite library, Noah raises his sword with authority and unleashes the full power of his newfound divine energy. The young man unleashes a colossal burst of light directly at the armored monster's chest, initiating an overwhelming counterattack to end that long dungeon battle. With his purple eyes gleaming intensely, Noah declares firmly that this time he will sever his opponent's cursed arm once and for all. The young man charges forward like a golden lightning bolt straight at the armored monster, initiating a high-speed confrontation. He projects his claws of pure divine light to seize and immobilize the corrupted flesh arm of his rival. This special technique allows the user to freely control multiple blades of bright light, which can assume both offensive and defensive forms depending on their skill. With a swift movement, the golden light blades spin violently and begin to slice through the creature's cursed arm. Osrek watches the scene in utter shock, shouting in amazement that the boy managed to sever the monster's indestructible limb using only the light around him. The armored opponent roars in pain as his corrupted flesh arm is hurled away across the stone ground. Noah takes advantage of the huge defensive opening and delivers a deep thrust directly into his opponent's chest. With an extremely confident smile on his face, the young man announces that the game has finally turned in their favor. He channels all his divine energy into the hilt of his sword, generating an immense explosion of light that pierces through his rival's armor. The armored guardian lets out a final, agonizing roar as his metallic body begins to be completely disintegrated by the holy light. The enemy's helmet falls completely empty onto the stone floor, while Noah silently celebrates the fall of the first opponent. Without missing a beat, the youngest of the Daskor brothers spins swiftly to disintegrate the second suit of armor that threatened them with the same divine power. Noah pauses for a moment to catch his breath and glances sideways to ensure that any threat in the area has indeed been neutralized. In the distance, the terrifying green smoke of the curse that covered Julia's body begins to dissipate rapidly. However, before being completely destroyed, the second monster manages to fire one last acidic blast, causing Julia to scream desperately for her brother to dodge in time. Noah reacts immediately and crosses his arms, projecting his blades of golden light to form an impenetrable barrier in front of him. The immense beam of acidic energy violently collides with the boy's divine shield, creating a massive clash of forces. Noah firmly plants his feet on the ground and manages to deflect the entire trajectory of the poisonous beam to the sides of the hall. The impact of the deflected blast generates a colossal explosion of energy that seals the fate of the two creatures in the arena once and for all. The pieces of iron and stone from the second suit of armor collapse, shattered on the ground, definitively ending the confrontation. Noah relaxes his guard stance as the golden sparks around him begin to slowly dissipate into the... Julia watches her younger brother in utter astonishment, incredulous that he emerged completely unscathed from an acid blast of that magnitude. The young man calmly sheathes his sword and remarks quietly that the two guardians have now been successfully eliminated. A brilliant and immense column of golden energy erupts from the location, indicating that Noah's divine core is absorbing the purified force. The overwhelming flow of divine energy envelops the boy's entire body, filling him with a new range of spiritual power. Noah clenches his fist, feeling the newfound strength course intensely through his spiritual veins. The blue holographic screen confirms the successful elimination of the target, indicating that the level of their sacred demonic core has risen to level 2 and granting them a new special vision technique. The young man examines the congratulatory message displayed on the control panel and wonders in surprise if those words were left directly by the former Zex carrier. The system further explains that this is the natural way for the divine core to evolve, advising Noah to use his new abilities wisely in upcoming battles. Noah reflects, impressed by the method of evolution through combat, feeling quite excited to have unlocked a brand new technique so quickly. Osrek runs up to the young nobleman and asks, trembling and excited, if they really managed to annihilate that terrible monster from the dungeon once and for all. Julia examines the creature's remains on the ground and seriously confirms that it is indeed completely dead, indicating that there is one more detail to be verified. The silver warrior looks at her own arm and sighs in relief, noticing that all the acidic mist of the curse has completely disappeared from her body. Osrek cries tears of joy upon realizing that his beloved wife's curse has also been broken with the summoner's death, and Noah suggests they return to the city immediately to check on her. On the way back, Julia narrows her eyes and comments, quite intrigued, that Noah definitely doesn't act like someone who only possessed 2 power stars until a few days ago. The older sister demands to know where he learned that advanced, divine swordsmanship technique, leaving the young man tense and unsure how to explain the origin of his power. Noticing Noah's silence, Julia surmises that it must be a family trade secret and points out that there are several lineages of demonic core handling scattered across the continent. She lists the main known fencing styles, citing first the classic style of magic swords that serves as the basic foundation of all Dasquer. Julia also mentions the dreaded dark flame style, known as a purely destructive fencing technique specializing in absolute attack power. Next, she mentions the shadow lightning style, which focuses all its combat potential on the extreme agility and speed of movement of the warriors. Finally, Julia mentions the abyssal style, a silent combat technique highly specialized in the art of camouflage and deception in combat. The girl then stares at her younger brother quite sternly and concludes that his power does not belong to any of the 4 known orders, directly questioning what he is hiding. The two heirs stared at each other in silence for a few moments, in a moment of extreme tension and mutual distrust. However, Julia breaks the tension with a light laugh and decides to drop the subject for now, finding the situation amusing. As she walks away, the Silver Warrior enthusiastically announces that she will be eagerly awaiting the day when they both put their demonic cores to the test in the Great Succession Contest. Back at the main mansion, Noah walks alongside his instructor Kyle Olson, clutching the Book of the Eternal Depths tightly, planning to deliver it to his sister Eve in exchange for information about the assassins. However, upon opening the doors to Eve's private chambers, the young man is utterly shocked to find the entire hall completely ransacked and in ruins. Noah finds C's injured and angry at the scene, and the blonde brother desperately reveals that while he was away on his official mission, Eve was cowardly kidnapped from inside the mansion, prompting the younger brother to demand to know who was responsible. C's grits his teeth in anger and reveals Scar's name as the mastermind behind the crime, explaining that the third son was desperately seeking secret information about Noah's recent actions and rise to power. C's explains that Scar likely took Eve by force to extract confidential information about Noah from her at any cost. Noah smirks as he puts all the pieces together and finally confirms that Scar was the true mastermind behind the assassins who attacked him. To put it simply, the boy declares that they will invade Scar's stronghold to rescue Eve, leaving instructor Kyle Olson perplexed by the audacity of openly defying the third son. Noah grins mockingly at the instructor's concern and warns that challenge is too weak a term to describe what he intends to do. With a somber and focused gaze, the youngest of the Dasquer family vows that what begins now will be a completely one-sided retaliation on his part. C's expresses her determination to join the rescue to right her own wrong of leaving her sister unprotected, further shocking the elite instructor. Kyle pleads with them to at least wait for the guards to meet, but C's firmly retorts that they don't have time to waste on preparations. Noah compliments the idea by arrogantly reminding everyone that the swords of the Dasquer family never bend or break simply because they are outnumbered on the battlefield. Understanding the young master's unwavering determination, Kyle relents and agrees to ensure the complete safety of the main mansion while the two head off to fight. The instructor assumes a posture of absolute respect and solemnly swears that he will defend the palace with his own life, no matter the cost. Noah and Cease walk resolutely towards the exit of the mansion, ready to invade the territory of their traitorous brother. Mounted on their warhorses, the two heirs gallop at high speed across the plains toward Scar Castle. During the journey, Cease expresses her concern for Eve's condition, but reflects that her sister is very intelligent and wouldn't let herself be subjugated by Scar so easily. Noah notices his blonde brother's deep confidence and asks what the real reason was that led him to become the personal bodyguard of his second daughter. Cease narrows his golden eyes and begins to reveal his past, explaining the natural limitations of his own demonic core. He openly admits that the raw power of his core group has always been quite inferior and weak when compared to the overwhelming talent of Damien and Julia. Cease explains that the only way to compensate for this genetic weakness was to focus on refining his fencing techniques to the extreme, which led him to seek secret information from Eve to learn rare and forbidden combat styles. Hearing the story, Noah finally understands why he had so much trouble predicting Cease's movements during their training in the mansion's courtyard. The young blonde man vows with great conviction that he will defend Eve's life with everything he has, knowing that he needs to keep growing to stay strong. The two siblings finally arrive before the immense iron gates of Scar Castle, and Cease suggests that the first step should be to track down Eve's exact location. Noah dismounts from his horse and coldly warns them that they need not hold back or spare the lives of any of the defenders of that place. The boy raises his right leg and channels an immense amount of sacred demonic energy to deliver a devastating kick. With a single physical blow charged with magical energy, Noah breaks through and shatters the immense iron gates of Scar's castle. A massive explosion of debris and smoke engulfs the main entrance, startling the entire inner guard of the castle. Without giving the enemies time for any defensive reaction, the two young men burst into the central courtyard at high speed. However, they are confronted by an entire army of masked assassins dressed in black, waiting in battle formation. Noah immediately identifies that battalion as Scar's personal unit of elite assassins, and Cease warns that everyone there is a highly dangerous warrior. The youngest son boldly leaps directly from the top of the stairs into the middle of the enemy encirclement, ready to begin the cleanup. The masked leader of the group, wearing a red scarf, mocks the invaders' audacity and arrogantly remarks that they were foolish to launch a direct, open-chested attack. Noah simply draws his sword and retorts with utter contempt, ordering his henchmen to bring Scar in immediately, as he has no interest in wasting time with small fry. The leader of the assassins is deeply irritated by the youngest member's insolence, and angrily remarks that the boy clearly doesn't understand the gravity of their outnumbered situation. One of the masked thugs attempts to deliver a sneaky sword slash to Noah's back. The young nobleman executes a flawless block without even needing to turn to face his attacker. With a swift swing of his blade, Noah unleashes a lethal counterattack that sends the assailant collapsing to the ground, spitting blood. Furious at the loss, the commander roars, ordering all the men to advance together and slaughter the two invaders without mercy. Noah begins a swift circular dance with his sword to repel the first wave of attackers. The weapons of young Daskur and the leader with the red scarf clash violently in the center of the courtyard, generating bright sparks. As Noah duels with the commander, Cease leaps acrobatically to hold off the other assassins who are trying to surround them. The leader of the elite unit begins to sweat nervously as he notices that the strength and precision of Noah's strikes exceed all his expectations in combat. At the same time, four masked warriors leap from the rooftop in a coordinated fashion to launch an aerial attack against Cease. Cease wields his giant training sword with mastery, perfectly blocking the combined impact of all the blades in midair. He lands with precision and immediately begins channeling the third form of his Dark Thunder style to finish off his opponents. A massive and destructive vertical bolt of blue electricity erupts from the ground, activating the Dark Thunder cutting flash technique. The overwhelming electric spell pulverizes the enemy's defenses and hurls dozens of henchmen across the courtyard. Several masked soldiers collapse, completely defeated and unconscious, onto the stone floor of the castle. With blue sparks still coursing through his armor, Cease raises his sword intimidatingly and challenges them to come with everything they've got. Noah watches his blonde brother's excellent performance and smiles contentedly, knowing he can leave the safety of that rear guard in his care without worry. The unit commander takes advantage of Noah's brief moment of distraction and rushes forward, delivering a swift blow, reprimanding the boy for looking away in the middle of a real fight. However, Noah easily dodges and delivers a precise diagonal cut that severs the attacker's limb and sends a roll of ancient parchment flying into the sky. The scroll glows intensely in the air, enveloped in red flames of teleportation, revealing the imminent activation of a dangerous runic magic circle in the combat arena. Noah is surprised to notice that the ground beneath his feet has begun to glow intensely with a dangerous red magic circle. The leader of the assassins unsheathes his sword, imbued with a dense purple mist, revealing that it is a secret and forbidden technique. He leaps from a height, delivering a brutal aerial slash, stating with sadistic glee that this style was developed specifically to assassinate members of the Daskor family. Noah focuses his vision and quickly activates his assessment system to analyze the strength of the opposing commander. The blue holographic screen confirms that the attacker's name is Vault Grave, revealing that he possesses 6-star swordsmanship attributes and a level 5 demonic core. To counter the attack, Noah assumes a solid defensive stance and conjures the second form of his Divine Force style. The two swords clash violently in the center of the courtyard, creating a great struggle of strength between the combatants. The youngest son let out a groan of pain as he felt a strange, paralyzing vibration pass through the metal of his weapon. Noah is thrown backward by the impact, while the opponent's dark mist begins to swirl dangerously around him. He tries to summon his special abilities, but realizes with panic that the energy flow from his demonic core has been completely sealed by Vault's cursed technique. Vault displays a victorious look behind his mask, and provocatively warns that the young nobleman will never be able to defeat his entire battalion using only ordinary fencing. Seize quickly approaches Noah and positions himself to stand guard beside his brother, providing support in the battle. Surrounded by dozens of assassins in a courtyard completely dominated by the enemy, the two brothers realize they are at a severe numerical disadvantage. Analyzing the situation seriously, Seize comments with considerable irritation on the troublesome nature of that magic capable of sealing their energy. The blonde brother decides to take the front line alone to hold off the entire enemy battalion and orders his younger brother to run ahead, making Noah worriedly ask if he will really be all right. Seize smiles and casually tells the brat not to worry about his older brother, ordering him to just run and slaughter Scar and bring Eve back. With a deeply grateful and focused look, Noah gives a slight nod and decides to fully trust in his brother's strength. The boy leaps spectacularly over the first barrier of enemies, dodging the blades that tried to block his path. He runs at high speed up the marble staircases of the palace, while the assassins desperately try to pursue him. Seize merely gives a mocking smile and warns his opponents that, although his demonic core is temporarily sealed, he is still perfectly capable of using his powerful elemental magic. The blonde heir channels his spiritual power and causes a gigantic wall of solid stone to violently emerge from the courtyard to block the path of all pursuers. The colossal rock barrier, which he named the Stone Path, stretches from end to end and completely divides the central courtyard. Seize roars authoritatively, directing Noah to the most likely location of Eve's captivity, indicating the adjacent residence as the most suspicious spot in the castle. Vault Grave panics at the sight of the barrier and desperately orders his surviving subordinates to overcome the stone obstacle in order to hunt Noah. However, sharp stone stakes begin to sprout at high speed from the cracked ground, impaling several masked soldiers at once. Vault is forced to retreat, jumping back in frustration at seeing his attacking force decimated in that way. A veritable forest of massive rock stakes fills the entire courtyard, keeping the assassin commander completely isolated from the outside. The leader of the elite unit gritted his teeth in rage at the humiliation of seeing his entire siege plan destroyed by a single support warrior. Displaying a completely calm and confident demeanor, Seize ironically challenges him to focus all his attention on the real fight that lies right in front of him. Meanwhile, in the main inner hall, Scar paces impatiently around Eve and aggressively demands that she reveal the secret behind Noah's power. Sitting firmly and tied to the wooden chair, Eve stares at him with utter contempt and assures him that he can ask as many times as he wants, because he will never get an answer from her. Scar gives a sadistic smile and points to Eve's personal servants who have also been captured and tied up, coldly blackmailing her with the lives of her trusted employees. Eve lets out a sigh of disgust and openly declares that having a weak and cowardly piece of trash like Scar as a younger brother is the greatest humiliation of her entire life, driving him mad with rage. Suddenly, the deafening noise of explosions and screams coming from the outside courtyard echoes through the living room windows. Eve smiles victoriously as she deduces that Noah has finally arrived to the rescue, while Scar mocks the youngest's foolishness for launching a frontal, chest-deep attack against his castle. The young heiress simply stares back at him with considerable pity and points out that her red-haired brother still doesn't understand anything at all about the younger brother's true strength. Eve adds that cowardly and deceitful methods are unbecoming of the true heirs of the Daskor family, emphasizing that Noah possesses something far more important than underhanded tricks: his own warrior pride. Scar grits his teeth in anger and tries to disguise his tension by claiming that the invasion will be the ideal opportunity to personally test the youngest son's true physical strength. Tired of his sister's taunts and insults, the red-haired boy draws his gleaming sword, consumed by pure hatred. Suddenly, the immense oak door of the hall shatters in one swift motion as Noah triumphantly enters, gliding intimidatingly across the wooden floor. The youngest son raises his head and heroically announces that he has come personally to rescue his sister from the clutches of that traitor. He assumes his guard stance with his legendary sword in hand, calmly calling out Eve's name. Still tied to the wooden chair, Eve flashes a proud smile and jokes that he took too long to arrive. Scar roars with fury and points his silver blade directly at the face of the invading youngest child. The two rival brothers position themselves in the center of the luxurious hall, preparing to begin the final duel for family honor. An atmosphere of absolute tension pervades the entire combat environment, as the two opposing spiritual energies begin to silently clash. Scar stares at the youngest son with considerable mockery, sarcastically questioning whether he truly believes he is capable of resolving that dispute with his own hands. He flashes his arrogant grin and asks with a rather superior air if Noah really thinks he's strong enough to defeat an elite warrior like himself. Noah simply gives a wide, extremely confident smile, replying with complete nonchalance that yes, he obviously intends to defeat him. Completely losing control and patience with his younger brother's audacity, Scar roars with hatred and lunges forward at high speed with his sword, engulfed in black flames to begin the deadly confrontation once and for all. Noah reacts instantly to Scar's furious advance, blocking the heavy blow with his combat sword. The terrible physical impact shattered the large glass window of the living room, throwing the two brothers directly into the outside patio in a shower of shards. During the freefall, the two continue exchanging quick and violent blows in the air, enveloped in purple smoke and electrical sparks. Noah and Scar land with precision on the stone patio, maintaining total focus and readjusting their stances for the next phase of the duel. The youngest son focuses his purple vision on his treacherous brother to reactivate his magical ability of spiritual assessment. The holographic screen reveals that Scar possesses exceptional attributes, standing out with 8 stars in his demonic core, and revealing that he is the true creator of the abyssal style. Noah coldly questions him about the real reasons that led him to send professional assassins to kill him, demanding explanations for even using innocent children as bait. Scar gives a sadistic smile and replies mockingly that the answer to that question should be extremely obvious to everyone. The red-haired brother roars in fury, saying that Noah's mere existence deeply irritates him, launching into yet another impetuous attack. The two opposing forces collide violently and directly once more, creating an immense explosion of purple and gold energy in the courtyard. In the midst of the confrontation, Noah realizes with relief that the energy flow from his demonic core has been fully released back, deducing that it ended up outside the range of Vault's runic circle. Scar rages furiously, claiming that the youngest son is weak and sickly, but that he still managed to receive recognition from his father, the patriarch Victor. Noah focuses all his attention on gripping the sword, while trying to decipher the erratic and deceptive trajectory of his rival's movements. Scar roars with hatred, ordering Noah to die once and for all while unleashing a storm of cuts covered in black smoke. Noah executes a spectacular low dodge, sliding across the rocky ground to avoid being sliced by his rival's blade. The two heirs separate again to catch their breath, gauging the distance between them in the strong wind. Noah mentally assesses that Scar's fencing is extremely refined and dangerous, as he cowardly but highly practical mixes feints with real attacks. Scar insanely announces that he will use the youngest son as a mere stepping stone to reach the top of the Daskor family succession war. The young redhead channels all his dark energy and begins conjuring the dreaded third form of his abyssal combat style. He activates the Phantom Legion's Night March technique, causing dozens of armed skeletal specters to emerge from dark cracks in the courtyard floor. Noah raises his blade and delivers a precise circular cut to try and disintegrate the first skeletons that advance towards him. Noticing how easily he destroys the bone specters, the boy wonders with concern if that entire legion is merely a cheap distraction for Scar. A skeleton suddenly emerges from the shadows behind him, delivering a downward blow with its weapon. The young nobleman quickly leans his body to the side to avoid the stealthy attack of the bone ghost. He raises his left arm to block the physical blow from a second skeleton that was attacking him at close range. Noah gritted his teeth as he felt the immense physical pressure of the bone attack, realizing with shock that those beings were not mere ordinary visual illusions, but projections with real physical mass. Scar's army of undead continues to advance chaotically and relentlessly in an attempt to corner the boy. To escape being crushed by the multitude of bones, the young heir leaps high towards the heavens enveloped in pure golden divine light. In the air, the boy focuses his hybrid power and prepares to unleash the second form of his divine force style. Noah initiates the conjuration of the devastating double celestial division technique, unleashing dozens of claws of brilliant light. The powerful golden slashes crisscross the courtyard at high speed, pulverizing and disintegrating dozens of bone specters at once. Noah lands by sliding across the ground and delivers a low, circular slash to wipe out the last undead from that section of the courtyard. However, the boy sighs in frustration as he notices that new dark rifts are constantly opening to summon more and more spectral soldiers into combat. He plants his feet firmly on the stone ground and channels the electrical sparks from his hybrid core to increase his physical speed. The youngest advances like a golden lightning bolt, slicing through every skeleton that dares to approach his area of operation. Forcing his way through the spectral crowd, Noah focuses his gaze directly on Scar, who awaits him with a mocking smile at the far end of the courtyard. Scar challenges the youngest son with shouts, arrogantly asking if Noah really believes he can defeat that entire army of the undead all by himself. Ignoring the coward's taunts, the boy dodges the bone claws and charges forward, violently crossing swords directly at Scar. Even surrounded by the spectral crowd pressing him from all sides, Noah remains absolutely focused on breaking through his red-haired brother's defenses. He coordinates his light claws to sweep away the smaller specters, while simultaneously pressing his combat sword against Scar's blade. The violent clash between the energies of the two brothers generates an immense and brilliant struggle of forces that cracks the stone ground of the courtyard. Noah roars defiantly, vowing that no matter how much trash or weak specters his rival decides to put in his path, he will not succeed. With a precise fencing move, the boy deflects the trajectory of Scar's blade to break his opponent's balance. Noah focuses all his physical strength and prepares to deliver another crushing blow towards his red-haired brother's exposed guard. He rotates his body in the air, gathering golden divine energy into his combat sword to deliver the decisive blow. Scar is thrown backward by the violent impact and falls to his knees on the ground, letting out a groan of deep pain as his defense is completely broken. Noah stands firmly in the center of the courtyard in his classic guard stance, patiently awaiting a reaction from his weakened opponent. Consumed by pure hatred and humiliation, the red-haired heir plunges his sword into the cracked courtyard floor, channeling all his remaining abyssal dark energy. Scar strikes the ground with extreme force, generating an immense purple shockwave that causes sharp spikes of dark energy to rapidly sprout from the earth. Noah's eyes widened as he realized the stone stakes, shrouded in darkness, were rapidly approaching, and he quickly threw himself backward to try and escape being impaled by the brutal force of Scar's magic. From within the immense red portal, a colossal skeletal creature in the form of a bone dragon emerges, tearing up the surrounding ground. Scar points his blade with intense hatred and furiously orders the skeletal beast to tear Noah apart without mercy. The terrifying skeletal dragon roars deafeningly, preparing to crush the youngest with its colossal claws. Noah simply gives an extremely calm and confident smile, deciding that this is the perfect opportunity to test his new power. The system screen activates, confirming that your sacred demonic core has reached a much higher power level, unleashing the sacred darkness eyes technique. He adopts his most refined fencing stance and conjures the fifth form of his divine style. His eyes glow intensely with a golden runic pattern as he activates the power of the eyes of sacred darkness. The young man leaps high in an acrobatic fashion, easily dodging the skeletal dragon's attack. Noah lands with extreme lightness directly on top of the colossal creature's bony head. He points his blade of divine energy at the monster's skull to begin channeling his mental magic. Noah's eyes and the red jewel of the skeletal dragon align in perfect spiritual synchronicity. A powerful current of golden electricity courses through the dragon's entire skeletal structure, rewriting Scar's control. Scar watches the scene, completely paralyzed and speechless, as he sees his younger brother subdue the beast without any physical effort. The red-haired villain becomes desperate and shouts furiously for the dragon to react and devour Noah immediately. Noah coldly warns that it's useless to try to control him, explaining that his new mystical eyes have deciphered Scar's summoning technique and taken complete control over the monster. The skeletal dragon turns menacingly against Scar himself, causing the boy to curse in anger at what he believes to be just a cheap trick. Sensing imminent danger, Scar is forced to adopt a desperate defensive stance with the first form of his abyssal style. Noah orders the attack, causing the bone creature to unleash a devastating blast of purple energy using the dark piercing tooth technique. The lightning strike generates a gigantic and violent explosion of dust and energy that sweeps across the entire center of the courtyard. Scar barely manages to escape the initial impact, leaping out of the smoke visibly bruised and furious at the counterattack. The youngest of the Daskor brothers observes his traitorous brothers retreat from above and reinforces that the entire elite unit no longer poses any threat to them. Scar struggles to his feet, wiping the blood from his face and once again preparing his sword, engulfed in black flames. Once again, the skeletal dragon channels its power and unleashes another destructive blast of dark energy against the villain. The new explosion shakes the entire ground around the mansion, covering the battlefield with a huge curtain of gray smoke. Taking advantage of the dense smoke, Noah leaps from the dragon and executes a high-speed slashing attack that strikes Scar squarely in the chest, causing him to spit blood. Extremely weak and bleeding heavily, Scar recoils and mutters bitterly that he will have no choice but to resort to his last resort. The young redhead pulls out a mysterious silver flute and brings it to his lips to play a somber melody. The magic song opens a vast, brilliant portal of cosmic energy in the center of the castle courtyard. From inside the portal, young Eve emerges completely bound and held hostage under the threat of swords wielded by two masked henchmen. Scar flashes his most sadistic and cowardly smile, reminding Noah that the real reason he was there was to save his sister's life. The villain makes a signal and the assassin brings the sharp blade close to Eve's neck, threatening to slit her throat immediately. Noah grinds his teeth in silent fury, calling his brother a cowardly bastard as he is forced to freeze in his movements. Scar points his sword mockingly and coldly warns that he will only spare Eve's life after he manages to personally slaughter Noah. The young man bites his lip in frustration, finding himself completely powerless against his rival's cheap blackmail. Suddenly, a colossal beam of red energy descends from the heavens with absolutely devastating force directly onto the location. Scar is thrown backward by the forceful wind of the collision and screams in fright, not understanding who dared to interfere so violently in the duel. Amidst the smoke emerges Damien Daskor, the firstborn heir of the family, wielding his heavy shield to protect Eve from any danger. Scar is completely shocked and stammers as he recognizes the imposing figure of his older brother blocking his path. Damien warns in his imposing voice that Eve had already officially declared her neutrality in the dispute, and that Scar should be very familiar with the strict laws of the Daskor family. The young redhead shouts furiously, questioning what Damien has to do with the situation and refusing to accept the older man's orders. With his red eyes blazing with fury, Damien coldly warns that he will personally eliminate Scar for breaking the sacred rules of the succession contest. Scar takes a step back, filled with frustration and fear, realizing he has no chance of surviving against the overwhelming strength of his firstborn son. On the other hand, Noah observes everything with extreme irritation, refusing to allow anyone else to decide the outcome of his personal revenge. The boy assumes his fighting stance and emphasizes that this is an official life-or-death contest where demonic forces are at stake. Facing his older brother directly, Noah makes it abundantly clear that he will not tolerate anyone standing in his way, no matter how strong they may be. Damien understands his younger brother's determination and agrees that interfering in an official duel of course would also violate established laws, while Eve flashes a proud smile in the background. The older brother decides to retreat and protect Eve, ordering Noah and Scar to fight with all their might under the watchful and impartial gaze of their official witness. With the field finally clear and safe for his sister, Noah raises his gleaming sword and invites his red-haired opponent to resume the final combat. With an extremely provocative smile on his face, the boy ironically questions whether Scar would be incapable of fighting seriously without needing to rely on defenseless hostages or innocent children. Scar grinds his teeth, consumed by a blind and sick hatred, ranting bitterly about the fact that everyone continues to look at him with such superiority and contempt as he prepares for his last desperate attack. Scar channels his power and menacingly activates the seventh form of his abyssal style. He is completely enveloped by a dense cloud of purple energy, activating his dark armor known as the Robe of Shadows. With a sadistic and insane look, the red-haired brother points his blade at Noah and vows that this time he's going to slice him into little pieces. Noah positions himself defensively, knowing full well that the greatest strength of the abyssal style is to disorient and confuse the opponent's mind during the fight. He decides that his best option is to advance aggressively without giving any openings in order to maintain control and the advantage in the fight. The swords of the two heirs clashed with extreme force in the center of the courtyard, generating an intense wave of electrical sparks around them. Several of Scar's illusions suddenly appear, attacking from opposite sides in an attempt to break through the youngest son's guard. Noah is not fooled by the copies and immediately activates the double celestial division technique, releasing a golden flash. The devastating blow surges forward, destroying everything in its path, but Scar manages to use his shadow barrier to contain the force of the impact. The youngest son is quite surprised and tense when he notices that his brother was able to perfectly block his double celestial split. Scar takes advantage of the boy's moment of hesitation and quickly begins conjuring the fourth form of the abyssal style. The red-haired heir executes the invisible slash, projecting a dangerous blade of red energy that tears through the air at high speed. Noah tries to read the swift attack, but the enemy's sneaky blade manages to violently break through his magical barrier. The boy strains as hard as he can and grinds his teeth as he is pushed by the force of the blow, which grazes him. Noah realizes with shock that this is a powerful cut from the demonic core, which is simply impossible to defend against in the usual way. He is forced to perform an acrobatic backflip to avoid even more serious injuries. Scar relentlessly advances toward the youngest, shouting furiously in the direction he thinks he's fleeing amidst the fight. The two resume exchanging rapid blows in the air, mixing their brilliant energies in an electrifying contest across the courtyard. Noah groans in pain as he is constantly pressured by his opponent's absurd speed and fencing tricks. From a distance, Scar watches with considerable frustration the fact that his younger brother managed to avoid a fatal injury in such an extreme situation. Noah plants his feet firmly on the cracked ground and raises his sword with both hands, concentrating all the hybrid energy he has left. He unleashes a devastating vertical slash that causes a gigantic torrent of golden energy to erupt from the ground against his rival. The impact generates several bright shockwaves that spread in a circular pattern throughout the combat arena. Noah analyzes Scar's deceptive swordplay and incredible defensive barrier, realizing that he won't be able to win using only his current strength. The boy questions his brother about why someone so strong would resort to such cowardly methods instead of fighting fairly in the War of Succession. With a bitter look in his eyes, Scar shouts that he did all that because his father never acknowledged him, claiming that the patriarch considered his talent for illusions useless. The young redhead recalls his days of solitary training and explains that he created the abyssal style precisely to prove the value of his misunderstood talent. Scar bitterly laments that, even after he developed these complex combat techniques, the dreaded Victor Daskor continued to ignore his existence. The young man insanely concludes that the only way left for him to be noticed is to achieve absolute victory at any cost in the dispute over the heirs. Displaying a sadistic, blood-stained smile, he vows to force his father to acknowledge his true power through this bloody contest. Suddenly, a huge and terrifying column of red energy erupts from his body, covering the entire scene with an evil aura. Scar roars that the idle chatter is over and orders the youngest son to serve as food to pave his way to leadership of the family. He points his silver blade and begins conjuring the powerful and destructive ninth form of his abyssal style. The villain invokes the destructive dragon burial technique, materializing a gigantic serpent of red and dark energy over the courtyard. The colossal beast slithered swiftly through the skies above the mansion, covering the entire surrounding forest with a terrifying reddish light. The red energy creature descends at high speed toward the youngest to crush him once and for all. The violent impact of the dragon's attack completely destroys the courtyard floor, creating a massive cloud of dirt and debris in the air. However, a brilliant and impenetrable golden barrier of absolute repulsion activates at the last second to completely nullify the monster's attack. Noah reappears completely unharmed in the center of the courtyard, spectacularly protected by the immense power of his golden divine aura. Scar is utterly shocked to see that his most powerful attack was so humiliatingly repelled by the boy's unwavering defense. Although quite tired, the youngest son displays a confident look as he prepares to launch the final counterattack. Scar tries to maintain his composure and scoffs, saying that Noah's demonic core has reached its limit and that he doesn't stand a chance using only pure swordsmanship. Undeterred by the traitor's provocations, the young man calmly puts his hand in his pocket to retrieve a small object. The red-haired brother's eyes widen, and he tenses as he recognizes the mysterious item Noah is holding with such confidence. Noah reveals that he solidified the very poison Scar forced him to take daily through his servants in the mansion into a stable pill. Without a second thought, the young heir puts the poison pill in his mouth and swallows it whole, much to the bewildered gaze of his brother. Scar screams in despair, asking if the youngest has finally lost his mind, warning that the substance will fatally overheat his core. However, Noah's body has already developed a resistance to the poison, and reacts by releasing a spectacular amount of golden, electric energy across the court. The young nobleman gives a wry smile and explains that the pill will serve as the perfect fuel to stabilize and enhance his hybrid core. The system's holographic screen confirms that your divine core has reached level 20, unlocking the powerful swordsmanship technique of flashing light and darkness. Noah remembers the tragic end of his old world, and mentally vows that he has compelling reasons not to allow himself to lose that battle of heirs. He channels his immense hybrid energy to conjure the second form of his divine style. Amidst a storm of light and golden lightning, the boy executes the devastating technique of flashing light and darkness. The immense golden blade surges forward, tearing through the air directly toward the colossal shadow dragon summoned by Scar. The two colossal attacks collide violently, creating a spectacular clash of forces and lights in the middle of the courtyard. A gigantic explosion cracks the castle's atmosphere as the techniques of light and darkness cancel each other out. The immense, blinding flash pushes the two combatants back with an overwhelming shockwave. A massive dome of fire and red smoke expands, destroying the stone slabs of the combat arena. A gigantic curtain of dust and debris rises into the sky, completely obscuring the aftermath of the destructive impact. Damien Dascor stands firmly to protect Eve, using his heavy shield to block the remnants of the explosion. The terrifying shockwave sweeps across the remaining hills, causing the entire forest to tremble frighteningly. Damien remains motionless and imposing before the ruins of the courtyard as the smoke slowly begins to clear. He and his sister Eve observe the center of the battlefield with expressions of intense tension and surprise. When the dust finally settles, Scar appears on his knees utterly weakened, while Noah remains standing wielding his sword. Noah points his blade directly at his defeated opponent and calmly declares that he does not wish to take his brother's life. He coldly orders Scar to surrender once and for all to put a definitive end to that family feud. Scar lowers his head in defeat and agrees to hand over his demonic core, causing Noah to formally agree to accept his brother's surrender. However, the youngest son's warrior instincts detect imminent danger when he notices a subtle change in Scar's gaze. In a cowardly move, Scar unexpectedly pulls out a hidden dagger to pierce Noah's guard. Scar displays a devilish grin as his green eye gleams with pure killer instinct at the moment of attack. The villain plunges the sharp blade directly into Noah's side, leaving the boy severely wounded. Damien and Eve watch the terrible scene in utter shock at such treachery. Scar roared furiously that he would never bow down or accept surrendering to someone as weak as the youngest member of the family. He delivers another violent blow to the boy, shouting that he would never allow trash to rise above his position. Noah falls to his knees, spitting out a lot of blood and pressing his chest, which is badly wounded by his rival's surprise attack. Desperate to see her younger brother in that critical death-prone condition, Eve screams his name in a panic. Damien immediately steps in front of her to prevent her from intervening in the bloody combat arena. Scar raises his silver blade with all his might to deliver the final blow of mercy against Noah. However, even with his body torn apart, Noah reacts with godlike reflexes and delivers a merciless diagonal slash against his attacker. Scar is thrown backward amidst a violent rain of blood, falling on his back onto the stone floor of the castle courtyard. The third son lies dying on the ground with his chest completely ripped open, his eyes widening as he realizes his imminent end before his youngest sibling. Absolute silence returns to the courtyard as the two brothers lie fallen, on the verge of physical exhaustion. Noah realizes the ruthless nature of the Dascor family, where pride and victory are prioritized above the very lives of its members. Viewed from above, blood spreads rapidly beneath Scar's motionless body as his life completely ebbs away. Eve manages to free herself and runs desperately towards Noah to administer first aid to her younger brother. Damien coldly warns that the injury is fatal and that the doctors won't arrive in time, but his sister insists that she will take care of it herself. Eve closes her eyes and begins to conjure a mysterious, dense, greenish magical energy from her hands. She gently places her hands on Noah's wounded chest, activating the first form of her shadow flower style. A soft, bright green light envelops the boy's entire torso as the nebula lantern technique is activated. The mystical spell begins to work rapidly in his veins, stopping the bleeding and regenerating the boy's torn tissues. Noah breathes more easily as Eve's magic precisely reconnects the flow of his weakened core. Opening his eyes and sitting up slightly dazed, the boy hears his sister explain that although she doesn't fight, she is proficient in manipulating demonic cores. Noah thanks his sister for her timely help and immediately turns his attention to the lifeless body of his opponent in the castle courtyard. Eve points to the battle's legacy and warns that the valuable reward now rightfully belongs to him. Scar's crimson demonic core emerges, floating in the air, enveloped in a dark mist just above his chest. The youngest of the Dascor family gazes at the floating relic and whispers thoughtfully about the opportunity to absorb his rival's power. He slowly crouches down and extends his right hand toward the floating red core under Eve's watchful gaze. The instant he touches the spherical artifact, an immense and brutal torrent of red demonic energy invades his body. He clenches his fist with extreme force as he feels that new flow of demonic energy merge perfectly with his hybrid core. With his purple eyes gleaming intensely, Noah watches the system's blue holographic screen confirm the successful fusion of powers. The boy is quite impressed to realize that his demonic core evolved 3 levels in a single instant, saving him years of arduous training. He looks around with satisfaction and remarks that the most pressing problems seem to have finally been resolved there as well. At that moment, the second son sees, calmly walks back to the courtyard after finishing his part in the fight against the assassins. The blond man gazes at his rival's body lying on the ground and confesses, surprised, that he never imagined the youngest member of the family would be the only one capable of defeating Scar. Sees asks if Eva's hurt, and the young woman confirms that she is fine, explaining that Damien acted quickly to save her when the situation became dangerous. Sees is surprised by his eldest son's attitude, but Damien coldly retorts that he only acted to uphold the family's strict code of conduct. The older brother turns his back and stares at Noah seriously, showing that he is paying close attention to his progress. The two heirs face each other in a moment of profound tension and mutual respect amidst the ruined courtyard of the castle. Eve and Sees observe the interaction in absolute silence, feeling the strong spiritual pressure that begins to emanate from their stronger siblings. Damien comments that it was an extremely interesting fight, and confesses to being curious about the mysterious power that Noah demonstrated beyond the conventional demonic core. However, before the eldest son can continue with his questions, his elegant approach draws the attention of everyone present. An envoy from the main mansion bows cordially and announces that Patriarch Victor demands Noah's immediate presence. A short time later, the youngest son travels to Victor's imposing castle to personally introduce himself to the supreme leader of the family. Sitting in his luxurious office, Victor comments that he heard rumors that Noah took Scar's core after defeating him definitively. The patriarch rests his hands under his chin and questions him with an extremely intimidating look to confirm the truth about what happened. Noah holds his father's gaze without hesitation and confirms with absolute confidence that he has won the battle for control of the cores. Victor asks how strong Scar really was from his perspective, and the boy honestly admits that his brother surpassed him in both swordsmanship and energy control. The leader then questions him about why he believes he managed to achieve victory despite being at such a significant technical disadvantage against his rival. Noah feels the immense pressure and reflects for a moment before formulating his definitive answer to his father. He firmly declares that his insatiable thirst for power and strength is something in which he absolutely refuses to be surpassed by anyone in this world. Victor flashes a wide, knowing smile and praises his youngest son's determination, considering it an excellent response for a Dasquer. The patriarch points out that Scar had sunk deep into unforgivable crimes, and because Noah had put an end to it, he decided to grant him a valuable reward of his choosing. The leader encourages him to ask for whatever he wants without hesitation, and Noah requests as a reward to be dispatched to a specific mountainous region of the continent. Victor finds the unusual request strange and asks if the boy lacks ambition, suggesting that he could have asked for gold or legendary weapons as a gift. With a confident look, Noah replies that what he intends to obtain in that mysterious place is infinitely more valuable than ordinary treasures. The patriarch smiles, noticing that it all boils down to his son's relentless pursuit of power, and agrees to grant the trip, asking what the desired destination is. A short time later, a carriage speeds forward, crossing the dangerous rocky roads of a mountainous region. Inside the vehicle, Lydia and Selena accompany the young master on his journey, and the boy makes it very clear that they are not there just for a ride. Noah flashes a wry smile and asks the two to continue taking care of all the matters and preparations around him. Lydia responds promptly and quite enthusiastically, assuring him that he can leave all the support responsibilities in their hands. Suddenly, Selena gasped in astonishment as she looked out the window of the moving carriage. The servant points excitedly to the mountainous landscape ahead and announces that their final destination has finally appeared on the horizon. Noah gazes at the vast view and thinks with satisfaction that they have finally reached the legendary city built through an ancient alliance between dragons and humans. The group takes in the stunning and monumental Draconia, known as the City of the Dragon's Nest, where colossal beasts fly freely among the sacred mountains. As soon as he gets off the carriage, the young man is approached by armed guards who question him about whether he is indeed the heir Noah Dasquer. The imposing warriors display their dragon-like features and formally introduce themselves as the official envoys of the city of Draconia. The sentinels volunteer to guide the group safely along the mountain roads from there on to the main gates. Noah's purple gaze fixed with considerable curiosity as he noticed the scaly physical features of those warriors. He surveys the steep slopes around him as the strong wind blows dust across the mountain's stone roads. The young man gives a slight smile and thanks the escort for their kindness, gladly accepting the help of the local guides to continue his journey. Suddenly, enormous red monsters leap from the top of the cliffs, screaming fiercely that they have finally found a member of the Daskor family. The colossal invaders smash the ground as they land violently on the road, completely blocking the carriage's path. Noah encounters a group of wild, red-skinned horned ogres who stare at him quite aggressively. Draconia's envoys are put on alert upon recognizing the ogre clan, immediately ordering the boy to take a step back and protect himself from an imminent attack. The youngest of the Daskor family remains calm as he recalls that the ogre clan is a warrior race that has fiercely fought for control of that region against the dragons for generations. He knows that these brutal monsters value only physical strength and conflict, which has led to a bloody, decades-long war against the peaceful order of Draconia's envoys. The guard explains that the enemy clan probably wants to prevent any kind of alliance or assistance from the Daskor family, and the boy replies that he understands the situation perfectly. Noah turns to the side and firmly orders Lydia and Selena to run into the carriage for protection during the physical confrontation. One of the gigantic ogres steps forward with considerable mockery, scoffing at the fact that Draconia's envoys need the help of a weakling like himself. The ogre leader roars with disdain, stating he has no interest in wasting his time with a weak brat, and orders Noah to return home immediately if he wants his life spared. Noah merely gives a sarcastic wry smile and asks ironically if the monster really believes things will be that easy for their clan. The boy channels his hybrid energy and returns the exact same threat, warning that if the monsters flee now, he will let them leave unharmed. Overcome with pure fury at being ridiculed in that way by a human, the giant ogre flexes his muscles and calls him an arrogant brat. He roars that he will crush each of the youngest child's bones until they are reduced to dust, preparing to unleash a devastating, high-powered attack. Noah remains standing still with complete composure as currents of golden and purple electricity begin to circulate around him. The young warrior gripped the hilt of his battle sword tightly, preparing to launch his swift counterattack against the beast. The ogre clasps his colossal hands together and delivers a devastating downward hammer punch toward the boy. With impressive agility, Noah leaps high into the air to dodge the physical attack that crushes the ground just below his feet. The monster's brutal punch opens a gigantic crater in the dirt road, hurling colossal rocks in all directions. Floating in the air amidst the debris, the youngest observes from above the completely exposed guard of the giant, red-skinned opponent. While the ogre roars furiously upon realizing he missed his target so cleanly, the boy focuses his purple gaze to deliver the decisive blow. He dives like a swift falcon towards the top of the opponent's head, leaving him vulnerable to aerial attack. Noah activates the first form of his divine style, unleashing the technique of flashing light and darkness. A powerful burst of mixed energy strikes the monster head-on, tearing through the atmosphere and cracking the surrounding rocks with colossal force. The ogre's eyes widened in utter shock as he realized he had been outpaced before he could even react to the advance. The red-skinned beast collapses heavily onto the stone floor, completely defeated by the precise blow of the dark-haired boy. The monster's colossal body crashes into the ground, generating a massive cloud of dust and debris that covers the mountain road. Noah wipes the energy trail from his weapon and analytically remarks that the enemy's attack relied purely on clumsy brute force. He turns to the side and points out that, although the physical strength of that race is indeed impressive, their swordsmanship and movements are too sloppy to pose a real danger. The rest of the ogre gang roar with hatred and think that the youngest has committed a huge folly by facing them head-on and without any support. One of the gigantic ogres lunges forward, delivering a direct punch to the young man who approaches at high speed through the monster tries to crush him with its colossal fist, but the boy deflects his body sideways with extreme physical ease at the last second. In the blink of an eye, Noah executes a clean diagonal cut that cuts through the tough carcass of the red-skinned creature. The opponent spits up a lot of blood due to the deep wound and collapses, powerless onto the cracked ground of the cliff. Noah simply looks up at the hilltops and challenges the remaining monsters to all charge at him at once. The other 4 ogres on top of the cliff stare at him with considerable anger and apprehension, seeing how easily their allies were defeated. Overcome by pure, savage fury at the humiliation, they let out deafening roars and leap in coordinated fashion from the top of the rocks to attack him. The red beasts descend like a storm of brutal blows directly against the young nobleman's position. Noah assumes his most refined posture and begins to channel the second form of his divine style. Several beams of golden light erupted from the ground at high speed, striking each of the attackers who fell from the air. The remaining ogres collapse, utterly defeated and unconscious, across the dirt courtyard, quickly ending the threat on the mountain road. Draconia's guides observe everything in utter shock, marveling that the power of the Dasquer family surpasses all the rumors they've heard. Lydia and Selina rush out of the carriage praising their master's impeccable performance, causing the young man to sigh and remind them that he had ordered them to stay hidden. The maids smile mischievously and retort that witnessing their young lord's victories is also part of the duties of a good domestic servant. Noah simply gives a slight smile and turns his purple gaze to the heavens, calling out to the last presence that continues to observe everything from afar atop the rocks. A gigantic dragon with outstretched wings begins to glide in circles above the mountain ravines, drawing the attention of everyone present. A warrior with dragon-like features clad in imposing golden armor boldly leaps from the back of the winged creature. He lands with extreme precision in the center of the dirt road, generating a large cloud of dust around him upon impact. The newcomer looks at Noah with respect and confesses that he witnessed with extreme clarity the extent of the young heir's impressive power in combat. He formally introduces himself as Adelbolt Fangre, the legendary commander of the mighty dragon riders of Draconia. Noah questions him about why he didn't intervene in the fight against the ogres, and Adelbolt explains seriously that the fate of his people could never be entrusted to a weakling who needs saving. The youngest of the Dasquer family gives a slight, knowing smile and asks directly if he passed that practical test of physical strength on the road. The commander gladly confirms and advises that he will now personally guide the group to the sovereign presence of Lord Alcardos. The young lord's carriage finally passes through the great stone walls and enters the bustling streets of Draconia under official escort. Selina gazes in wonder through the wooden window and marvels at the harmonious coexistence of humans and dragons in that place. Lydia agrees that a nation where such distinct races coexist peacefully is something extremely rare to see across the continent. The commander amicably suggests that the two explore the local shops later, assuring them that they will find many wonders throughout the city. The carriage moves towards an immense cavern under the imposing shadow of a blue dragon with outstretched wings that soars in the sky. Guided by the light of Adelbolt's lantern, the group enters the dark and enigmatic corridors that hold Draconia's greatest secrets. The group arrives before a gigantic runestone gate with the emblem of a dragon carved in relief. Adelbolt raises his lantern and announces loudly that he has brought the young master Noah Dasquer, as per the established orders. A mysterious voice echoes from within the chamber, ordering them to enter, while the gate begins to glow with golden lights in the eyes of the dragon carving. The immense double stone doors slide slowly to the sides, revealing the misty and sacred interior of the sanctuary. The group takes its first step toward the monumental hall, feeling a strong gust of spiritual wind swirling through the space. Noah feels an enormous magical pressure, intensely reflects that this spiritual force is comparable to, or even greater than that of his father Victor Dasquer. The proud warriors of Draconia immediately kneel as a sign of profound respect for the deity who resides there. Lydia and Selina cower in fear behind their master, struggling to withstand the overwhelming mystical aura of the hall. In the deep darkness of the sanctuary, two immense, brilliant blue eyes slowly begin to open before them. The legendary Dragon King cordially greets visitors and welcomes them to the sacred sanctuary. Revealing his magnificent white dragon form with a golden core in his chest, he greets the youngest son as his newest collaborator. The colossal Arcados rests majestically on his runestone throne, gazing at the group that seems minuscule in his presence. The two servants and local warriors observe the white deity with expressions of utter awe and wonder. Noah steps forward imposingly and announces that he has come to fulfill the direct orders given by his father Victor, making the dragon realize that an heir has been sent. The great Arcados expresses his gratitude for the help sent and praises the generous treatment shown by the Dasquer family. The dragon slightly closes its bright blue eyes and thoughtfully remarks that it senses an extremely nostalgic energy emanating from within Noah. The young man gives a slight, knowing smile and remarks that he expected nothing less from the legendary Dragon King who has lived and ruled since the earliest times of creation. The boy clenches his fist with extreme force as he feels the subtle flow of his sacred demonic core react to the presence of the divine creature. He concentrates and allows his powerful mixed aura to circulate freely through his body, illuminating the entire dark hall. The white dragon observes him from above with considerable curiosity, witnessing that impressive display of spiritual power. The white deity is silently moved upon recognizing the golden glow, and confesses that it never imagined it would see that sacred splendor again. Arcados then orders Commander Adelbolt to explain all the details of the mission to the youngest member, receiving immediate confirmation. The commander approaches Noah and offers to detail the official distress call they sent to the Dasquer family. He explains through records that the draconic people have been waging a bloody and grueling war against the ogre clan for countless years. Adelbolt reports that the balance of power, which had remained stable for so long, has recently undergone a drastic and dangerous shift. The officer points out the successive defeats of his army and reveals that the ogre clan had taken in a brilliant strategist who completely destabilized the course of the conflict. Noah asks if the goal of his mission is simply to help them turn the tide of the war, but the Dragon King clarifies that the proposal goes far beyond simple tactical assistance. The commander forcefully taps the tactical operations map, indicating that the ogres plan to deliver the final blow against his people very soon. Adelbolt draws his runic sword with great determination and reveals that they wish Noah to put a definitive and absolute end to that long war. The dragon closes its eyes with considerable melancholy as it begins to reveal the fragility of its own divine health. He reveals that his divine life is coming to an end and that his time of existence in this world is extremely short. Noah silently examines the Dragon King's condition, realizing that the great deity truly has very little time left. The boy remembers that when Arcado's existence fades, his divine heart will give rise to the legendary and immensely powerful Arcado's core. Noah remembers that in his past life, this divine power fell into the hands of the dangerous S-class criminal known as Fungus, resulting in a true tragedy of deaths. Determined to rewrite history and prevent disaster, Noah makes a commitment and vows to accept the mission of ending the war. Arcados expresses immense gratitude and promises that, upon his death, his heir will have legitimate permission to inherit his divine body as material reward. Commander Adelbolt pledges to provide all necessary military support during the campaign to eliminate the ogres in the region. He adds an important and worrying piece of information regarding rumors that the enemy clan has obtained possession of the legendary Orb of 8 Treasures. Noah's expression becomes extremely serious and focused as he listens to the officer's revelation about the enemy relic. He knows very well that the Orb of the 8 Treasures is a dangerous magical tool directly connected to military power and the mass destruction of nations. The youngest son vows to investigate the item's location and decides to secretly enlist the help of his informant sister, Eve, to expedite the tracking. A short time later, the boy walks through the bustling and peaceful cobblestone streets of the city of Draconia. Noah reflects that a war of that magnitude will surely escalate into a global conflict, and that he will need strong allies so he doesn't have to solve everything alone. He flashes an intriguing smile as he mentally ponders the possibility of inviting a legendary former ally to join his combat group. The boy walks past an imposing runic stone monument located in the center of Draconia's main square. He walks calmly under the shadow of the stone monument that boasts the statue of an ancient warrior riding a dragon. Noah focuses his gaze and gives a discreet smile as he spots the familiar silhouette of a young mage walking through the square in the distance. He recalls that in her past life, the prophetess Liliana was a top-level warrior and master healer who ended up dying heroically fighting against the invaders. Noah slowly approaches Liliana from behind, thrilled to have been given a new chance to reunite with his beloved comrade from his previous life. Sensing a strong and mysterious presence approaching from behind her, Liliana's bright blue eyes widen and she quickly turns around. Liliana notices Noah's fixed and confused gaze and gently asks the boy to stop staring at her so intensely in the middle of the square. She explains that her next musical performance is still a while away, revealing her elegant green traveling bard attire. Noah repeats the words, surprised by the direction the conversation is taking, making the young bard question, confused, whether he wasn't there precisely to hear her sing. The young man finds it very strange that such a powerful sacred warrior is working as a street singer, and apologizes before politely asking her name. The young bard holds her wooden stringed instrument firmly, and positions it elegantly to officially introduce herself to her new acquaintance. With a kind and friendly smile on her face, she formally introduces herself as Liliana, a simple traveling bard exploring the continent. Noah is perplexed to confirm that she is indeed using that artistic disguise to conceal her true, sacred identity as a saint from everyone else. Upon analyzing Liliana's mystical status, he notes that her spiritual power has not yet reached the peak of her past life, but it remains extremely strong and useful. Noah calls her by name in a very serious manner, and openly declares that he has an important proposal for military cooperation to make to her. After carefully listening to the details provided, the young bard understands the gravity of the impending war between the ogre clan and the draconic people. However, Liliana crosses her arms quite seriously and firmly states that she cannot lend her strength to that battle at the moment. Quite intrigued by the refusal of his former ally from his past life, the young man questions her directly about the reason for her decision. The young woman focuses her mystical gaze on him and coldly reveals that she can feel an extremely dark and demonic energy emanating from within him. Noah remains motionless and silent, while his dark, purple demonic aura is subtly revealed and detected by the saint's keen perception. The young man gives a discreet, sideways smile and asks what she thinks of a different kind of energy display, raising his left hand in the air. Liliana's eyes widened in utter shock as she noticed that the youngest also possessed a spectacular amount of pure sacred energy, harmoniously merging with the shadows of his core. Impressed by the young man's unprecedented hybrid core, she changes her mind and agrees to join the combat group under one specific condition. With an extremely mischievous smile and flushed cheeks, the young woman confesses that her condition is that Noah finds her an ideal romantic partner. The young man is completely perplexed and sweating profusely at this unusual request from his former battle companion. Noah finds himself forced to listen to Liliana's romantic and exaggerated daydreams, while trying to maintain his composure and seriousness in the town square. The young woman confesses that she prefers strong, gentlemanly men, playfully emphasizing that anyone with pure demonic power is out of the question for her. Noah sighs and reflects that his former ally's peculiar and enthusiastic personality really hasn't changed at all over time. The young man smiled slightly as he remembered the imposing Commander Adelbalt, thinking to himself that he already had the ideal candidate in mind to present to her. Satisfied with the sealed agreement, Liliana enthusiastically extends her hand and announces that she will be fully counting on his support from now on. Noah firmly shakes his new ally's hand and formally introduces himself using his official identity as Noah Dasquer. A short time later, the scene shifts back to the rocky, mountainous canyons surrounding the monumental City of Dragons. Liliana questions why they are walking through such an isolated valley, and Noah explains that they have come to train and strengthen their forces for the impending war. He recounts that he had heard in the past about the existence of a powerful magical relic lying dormant in the depths of a hidden sanctuary on that mountain. Suddenly, the young warrior focuses his vision and becomes alert upon noticing a subtle change in the flow of magical energy around them. The two adventurers arrive at the enigmatic entrance of an immense cave carved directly into the massive rock of the mountain. As soon as they take their first step inside, a strong, cold gust of wind rushes down the sanctuary's dark corridor. The boy activates his mystical senses upon noticing that a powerful guardian energy is manifesting itself in a rather aggressive manner ahead. A huge, brilliant purple runic circle activates on the stone floor, initiating the cave's magical defense spell. Noah draws his runic sword with great speed and orders Liliana to take a step back to protect herself from any surprise attack. He lunges headlong against the first opponents, who begin to emerge from the sanctuary's magical containment circle. A violent torrent of purple and gold energy takes over the entire corridor of the hidden sanctuary in the blink of an eye. The impact of the destructive clash of powers momentarily illuminates the dark interior of the immense stone fissure. Liliana analyzes the smoke residue and comments quite seriously that show of power was a clear and dangerous death threat against them. Noah teases her by asking if she's starting to get scared of danger, and the young bard confidently replies that that's impossible for her. The two continue advancing with determination through the enigmatic and shimmering depths of the sacred cave towards the temple. Keeping his hand firmly on the hilt of his combat sword, the boy focuses all his attention on tracking any suspicious movement in the shadows. Suddenly, a stealthy and extremely fast burst of dark energy surges toward the pair, attempting to surprise them in the dark corridor. Three grotesque, corrupted beasts with red eyes leap from the stone ceiling, crawling violently towards them. Liliana draws her runic healing grimoire and firmly assures that she will provide all the necessary rear support during the quick battle. One of the leaping monsters lunges with its sharp claws directly at the young nobleman's position in the cave corridor. Noah roars with determination and charges forward with his chest puffed out, his sword enveloped in currents of hybrid energy, to intercept the creature in midair. He executes a swift and precise circular dance, slicing through the air with extraordinary ease, targeting all three monstrous opponents at once. The beasts' bodies fall utterly destroyed onto the rocky ground, while the youngest lands with extreme physical lightness after the attack. Noah flashes a proud, knowing smile and calmly states that he is perfectly capable of taking down opponents of that basic level on his own. Liliana watches him, completely amazed by the youngest son's technical skill, enthusiastically praising the impressive strength of her new combat ally. Noah senses the approach of a threat of great proportions when he spots the immense tail of a beast, moving through the shadows of the hidden sanctuary. The boy shouts Liliana's name as a warning, urging her to be alert and prepare for the new ambush that is brewing. A gigantic and ferocious red-eyed lizard monster leaps from the top of the rocks, directly towards the young bard. Liliana reacts with impressive reflexes, raising her book of sacred spells to easily dodge the beast's heavy attack. With a determined battle cry, she leaps acrobatically and delivers a powerful glancing kick to her attacker in midair. The young woman conjures a gust of cutting wind from her book that pushes the colossal beast directly against the stone floor of the sanctuary. Liliana positions herself elegantly and warns that she can perfectly defend herself alone, making Noah proudly acknowledge the talent of his former ally. The young bard remarks that she has never seen creatures with such bizarre features, and Noah explains that the cave is a place where the energy of dragons accumulates in a dense form. He explains that due to this high concentration of power, the monsters in that region undergo bizarre and dangerous mutations if left unchecked on the mountain. If the contamination of the fissure continues to advance unchecked, a beast of absolute disaster class will surely be born there soon. The boy explains that an artifact capable of dispersing the power of the dragons was sealed in the cave precisely as a containment measure against this mutation. Liliana asks if this dispersal artifact is exactly the relic they came to that sanctuary to seek, receiving immediate confirmation. She questions why they need a dispersal item against the ogre clan, and Noah replies that it serves as a safety measure in case of emergency. The two heroes continue their descent through the dark and enigmatic corridors until they reach the entrance to an immense underground chamber. Liliana observes the monumental appearance of the stone room and deduces that this must be the deepest section of the entire hidden temple. The young bard's bright blue eyes widen as she focuses her gaze on a gleaming structure resting in the center of the hall. She points excitedly toward the center of the stone room and asks if that shiny, sword-shaped relic is the item they are looking for. Noah desperately yells for her to stop when he notices his ally's hand recklessly approaching the runic safety pedestal. He hastily draws his runic sword upon realizing that a dangerous magical defense mechanism has just been triggered by the runes in the room. The boy gritted his teeth, sensing the overwhelming aura of imminent danger of death approaching at high speed through the shadows of the temple. Noah yells for her to be careful and quickly throws himself to rescue his ally from the line of impact of the Chamber Guardian's surprise attack. A gigantic and terrifying dragon with purple spines leaps from the ceiling, delivering a devastating blow in the direction where they were seconds before. The colossal beast roars furiously in the center of the chamber, its armored stone carcass displaying dangerous, gleaming crystals. Noah watches the rear with considerable tension and warns that the exit from the cave has been completely blocked by landslides of heavy rocks. Without giving the invaders any respite, the purple-spined dragon unleashes a colossal and devastating blast of fire against the cornered pair. Noah cursed in anger as he realized that the storm of flames engulfed the entire hall and that there was no physical space to easily dodge it. Liliana reacts quickly, opening the pages of her grimoire of barriers to conjure a defense worthy of the enemy's attack. She extends her left hand and begins to recite the sacred incantations of restraint to conjure her spell of protection against the flames. The young mage activates the sacred circle's barrier, projecting an imposing golden honeycomb-shaped shield to contain the advancing fire. The dragon's colossal torrent of fire violently collides with Liliana's shield, illuminating the entire subterranean cavern with crimson sparks. The sparks of flame begin to slowly dissipate in the air as the magical pressure of the lethal attack decreases. The runic barrier in the shape of a beehive remains perfectly intact after withstanding the full intensity of the opponent's fire breath. Noah praises Liliana's excellent defensive work, noting that the golden shield withstood the lethal attack without showing any cracks. Without missing a beat, the youngest son firmly plants his right foot on the ground to begin his counterattack against the stone beast. Noah runs headlong toward the giant dragon, enveloping his body with his powerful hybrid energy for physical combat. The boy executes a swift sequence of fencing blows, enveloped in golden and purple electricity, to break through his opponent's crystal defenses. His blade precisely pierced the beast's thick armored shell, creating a massive shower of blood in the center of the underground hall. The impact of the youngest dragon's blow deeply cuts through the muscle tissue of the purple-spined dragon. The creature roars in deep agony as it is struck so severely and directly by the boy's swift counterattack. Noah performs a series of precise aerial acrobatics to evade the monster's claws, while maintaining his impeccable guard posture. Liliana watches the dust and debris falling from the ceiling and warns worriedly that the entire cave will collapse if the fighting continues at that level of intensity. Colossal chunks of rock begin to plummet from the cave's ceiling, forcing the mage to cast an emergency structural containment spell. She activates the pillars of the sacred circle, invoking immense and brilliant currents of golden energy to stabilize the ceiling. The sacred golden chains bind and immobilize the rockfalls in the air, keeping the roof structure firm for now. The young saint screams desperately for Noah to end the fight quickly, as her chains will not withstand that immense physical pressure for much longer. Noah understands the gravity of the situation and decides that he needs to narrow the impact area of his attack to finish the fight without causing the cave to collapse completely. The enormous tail of the spiny dragon swoops down at high speed toward the youngest child, attempting to crush him against the stone ground. Noah assumes his most lethal stance and begins channeling the first form of his divine arts. He focuses the entire flow of his hybrid core at the tip of his sword when activating the light and darkness flash technique. The boy relentlessly lunges toward the monster's flaming jaws to deliver the final blow that will end the subterranean battle. Noah lets out a determined war cry as he channels all the power of his sword toward the thorny dragon. The boy delivers an extremely precise and swift slash directly at the weak point in the creature's stone armor. A massive beam of purple and gold energy pierces the ceiling of the hall, dissipating the monster's forces once and for all. Noah lands softly on the stone ground just as the immense torrent of dust begins to settle in the temple. The colossal dragon of purple crystals collapses lifeless and bloodied onto the floor of the underground chamber. Noah asks if Liliana was hurt during the rockfall, and the bard replies that she's fine, but warns that they need to get out of there quickly before the cave collapses. The two quickly run towards the stone pedestal to retrieve the runic artifact that was sealed in the center of the room. The boy extends his left hand and firmly grasps the golden handle of the legendary magical relic from the temple. Liliana gazes in amazement at the dragon ring sword and confirms that it is indeed the power-dispersing artifact they were searching for. Noah confirms with satisfaction and orders them to leave the temple immediately before they become trapped in the rubble of the roof. A short time later, the scene returns to the sunny and bustling skies of the marvelous city of Draconia. Noah approaches Liliana in the middle of the square and hands her a sealed envelope, leaving the young bard quite curious about the gift. The youngest son explains that he promised to introduce him to a strong man, and reveals that the envelope is a letter of recommendation for Commander Adelbalt. He instructs her to deliver the letter to the military barracks, identifying herself as his ally, prompting the young woman to thank him enthusiastically and with a face flushed with happiness. Liliana bids a cheerful farewell and dashes off towards the barracks to meet her supposed ideal suitor from the City of Dragons. Noah simply gives a slight, knowing smile and calmly walks towards the town's local tavern to attend to other matters related to his expedition. The young man enters the bustling wooden establishment, observing the customers chatting and drinking at the tables around the room. The attendant at the counter greets him cordially and informs him that he has an unexpected visitor waiting for him at one of the tables. Noah focuses his gaze with considerable surprise as he tries to decipher who could be looking for him so suddenly in that place. He is shocked to find his blonde brother, C's Dasquer, calmly sitting at a corner table and waving casually. The youngest child approaches the table and curiously asks what his older brother is doing so far from home. C's extends his hand and hands him a sealed envelope, suggesting that he read the document to understand all the details of his presence there. Noah opens the letter and reads the secret report that his informant sister, Eve, wrote about the dangerous orb of the 8 treasures. The report confirms that the dangerous magical relic of mass destruction was indeed stolen from a neighboring nation not long ago by invaders. The message reveals that the perpetrator of the robbery is the dangerous international criminal Fungus, and that he fled directly in the direction of Draconia. Eve concludes the report with a stark warning for Noah to exercise extreme caution in how he handles this S-level threat. The boy understands the immense danger, remembering that the magic sealed inside that orb possesses enough destructive power to incinerate an entire city. This devastating spell of mass destruction is known to all and feared as the terrible falling stars. Noah whispers the spell's name reflexively, keeping his gaze fixed on Eve's report while C's silently observes him in the tap. He recalls with considerable anguish that this was the exact same forbidden magic that completely destroyed the entire city of Draconia in his past life. Upon reading the rest of the document, Noah notices an additional note from Victor ordering him to use C's as military reinforcements and return alive from the campaign. The youngest concludes that his blonde brother will be his official support in the battle, and C's comments that it will be an excellent exchange of combat favors for both sides. C's gives a wry smile and asks if he doesn't think it's a great deal for them, receiving a sincere thank you from Noah. Suddenly, the violent noise of banging and shouting at the front door interrupts the conversation between the two brothers in the tavern. Liliana bursts into the establishment, running desperately and shouting Noah's name, closely followed by the confused Commander Adelbalt. The young bard points her finger furiously at the youngest and shouts that this was definitely not what they had agreed upon in the square. She shouts indignantly that Commander Adelbalt already has a wife and children, making it perfectly clear that she absolutely refuses to get involved with a married man. All the other patrons in the tavern freeze in their conversations and stare at the scene with expressions of utter shock and malicious whispers in the hall. Noah shivered with nervousness as he realized he had made a huge blunder, and belatedly remembered that the commander of Draconia was indeed a family man. Adelbolt scratches his head, visibly embarrassed, and tries to justify himself by saying that even a dragon knight has strict moral limits against betrayal. The youngest son apologizes for the terrible misunderstanding, and hastily assures her that he will find another strong single partner for her. Suddenly, Liliana's eyes shone brightly in the shape of hearts, as she focused her gaze on the young blonde man sitting calmly at the table. Sees Daskor is completely confused, and lets out a murmur when he realizes that he has become the new object of interest for the scandalous young woman. Without wasting any time, the young mage quickly approaches and firmly grabs the arm of the blonde warrior, her face flushed. Liliana rubs against C's arm, exclaiming in amazement that he has impeccable musculature, and that he is exactly her ideal type of man. The blonde heir is startled and jumps back in the tavern, desperately questioning what's wrong with that crazy, reckless woman's head. Noah barely stifles a laugh and calmly explains to Adelbolt that C's will be her new combat partner and romantic advisor during the mission. Liliana holds C's hand firmly and affectionately, completely ignoring the blonde boy's attempts to escape from the table. Her eyes sparkle as she pleads with him to spend at least one romantic night with her, in exchange for his support in the war against Draconia. C's turns bright red with embarrassment and shoves her away, yelling at her to stop spouting such nonsense so casually in the middle of a public tavern. C's desperately yells at Noah to get that crazy bard away from him, but the younger brother just smiles maliciously and warns that Liliana is free to do whatever she wants with her new partner. Liliana celebrates with sparkling eyes as Noah declares his long-standing promise of a romantic nomination as officially fulfilled, leaving C's in absolute panic. The blonde warrior tries in every way to break free from the tight, clingy embrace of the sorceress, who remains clinging to his neck. Liliana gently pinches C's cheeks and declares, her face flushed, that she will be under his full care from now on. Unable to withstand so much pressure from his new suitor, Daskor's second son jumps out and flees desperately through the window, shouting that he never agreed to such madness. Liliana watches him flee through the air and dramatically laments as she sees him speeding away across the city rooftops. The young bard sighs, quite disappointed by the sudden departure of her blonde-haired suitor, while Noah merely observes the whole situation from afar. Outside, C's announces from afar that he will report Eve's important discoveries directly to the Dragon King. Noah fully agrees with the plan of action and commits to making all necessary preparations behind his own back while he is away. The blonde brother adopts a serious expression for a brief moment and kindly advises him not to push himself beyond his physical limits during the Draconia mission. He warns with concern that the dreaded Ogre King is a colossal beast of destructive power comparable to that of his own father, Victor Daskor. Without wasting any time, Liliana leaps out the window after C's, begging him to wait for her once and for all. However, Noah is quicker and extends his left hand to firmly grasp his ally's green cloak at the last second. The boy holds her firmly from behind and warns her that they don't have free time to waste chasing after C's in the town square. The youngest son points to the ravines in the distance, indicating that they are about to begin the secret invasion of the Ogre clan's main stronghold. Gazing at the immense enemy fortress beneath the cold fog, Liliana asks with considerable apprehension if he truly plans to invade that place using only the two of them. Noah clarifies earnestly that their only true objective there is to locate and destroy the Orb of the Eight Treasures without starting an open war. The young bard bites her lip apprehensively, knowing full well that even a stealthy infiltration will represent an absolute danger of death for both of them. She points to the countless bridges and sentries positioned all along the mountain and wonders how they will get through so much security without being seen. Without giving further explanation, Noah unexpectedly lifts her into his arms and states with complete composure that ogres are far too slow compared to his divine style. He focuses the purple and gold electrical currents from his hybrid core into his combat boots to gain momentum as he descends the hill. Activating his secret technique of rapid movement, the youngest child advances like an untraceable lightning bolt through the entire barrier of sentinels on the cliff. A bright trail of mixed energy crosses the castle's wooden bridges in the blink of an eye, without the fortress guards noticing the intrusion. The young nobleman moves with such speed that he appears as nothing more than a golden blur, tearing through the dark mist of the enemy mountain. One of the ogre leaders senses a strange shift in the spiritual wind on the bridge, and focuses his gaze with considerable suspicion around him. The monster turns around quickly, and its eyes widen as it spots the two invaders crossing the boundaries of the fortress's inner courtyard. With a surgical and extremely swift slash of his sword, Noah decapitates the enemy sentry before she can even call for military reinforcements. Another clan guard is startled to see his ally's head rolling across the stone floor and panics completely at the sight of the young man. The survivor tries to scream desperately, warning of the enemy attack, but the pair of heroes pass by him like a veritable whirlwind of golden light. Noah comments worriedly that they were finally discovered by the sentinels, but the young mage smiles and says there's nothing to worry about. She activates a sound-nullifying spell around the entire area and reveals that she has already conjured a powerful soundproof barrier to contain the voices. The youngest son praises Liliana's mystical efficiency, considering his former ally's support skills as impressive as in her past life. The pair of heroes continue to advance stealthily and nimbly across the suspended stone bridges of the ogre's luxurious palace. Liliana asks if the boy has any clues or information about the exact location where the monsters are guarding the mystical orb. Noah replies that the relic must be kept in the deepest section of the fortress, where the dreaded ogre chief usually resides. The youngest son focuses his purple gaze with great seriousness, remembering that the criminal fungus was a selfish coward who relied on the stronger ones. He deduces that, due to the greed of that S-level criminal, the dangerous orb of mass destruction will surely be well guarded near his position. The young nobleman gently sets his ally back down onto the stone floor as soon as they reach the main entrance to the throne room. The two arrive before an immense and frightening wooden gate decorated with gigantic skulls of glowing-eyed monsters. Noah carefully pushes open the enormous doors to peek into the foggy, dark interior of the ogre chief's great chamber. The boy makes a discreet nod and whispers, ordering them to enter the main treasure room at once. The wooden gate closes silently behind the intruders, completely isolating the pair from any easy escape route. The two run quickly along the stone walkway toward the center of the enemy's monumental underground temple. Noah gives a victorious smile as he spots the gleaming orb of the 8 treasures resting on a stone table at the back of the hall. However, the boy suddenly stops, quite tense, as he feels an overwhelming presence materialize behind him in the shadows of the room. He hurriedly pulls Liliana away, dodging a crushing blow, desperately warning that the enemy is positioned right behind his guard. The youngest son assumes his most solid defensive stance with his sword, while his instincts detect the approach of a colossal, red-eyed adversary. He is shocked to see the beast's absurd speed of movement, as it managed to dodge and instantly reposition itself behind him. A huge, dark hand firmly grips the orb of 8 treasures, while a deep voice remarks that he never imagined anyone would try to steal that relic from his warrior clan. The mighty ogre king steps imposingly out of the shadows and ironically praises the audacity and exceptional skills demonstrated by the 2 invaders in his territory. Noah recognizes that this colossal warrior will not be an easy opponent to deal with, but he knows very well that they cannot simply leave the sacred orb in the enemy's hands. The red-skinned monster fixes its fierce gaze on the pair of invaders and openly warns that it has a deep contempt for dirty tricks and cowardly infiltration tactics. Liliana apologizes rather ironically while opening her gleaming runic book to provide the necessary magical support during the battle. Noah assumes his classic fencing stance and focuses all his attention on the rapid movements of his powerful opponent. Formally revealing himself through the system as the great General Ogre Gazel, the powerful enemy roars with enough fury to crush the 2 brats with his bare hands.